Hello everyone and welcome to the Lightbringers podcast episode 23, I think. Yes, I wrote LB23 somewhere. I remember it. So that's what episode it must be. We are here doing the things and apparently I've forgotten how to stream and do anything. So you're going to be seeing us very shortly in a matter of time. There you go. Sorry. The new OBS it looks very, very different. It's exactly the same, but it froze me now because it's like it looks darker and it looks cool. Yes. Yes, and also I need to. Can you just say that again so that everyone can hear you?
What did I say? I have no idea. Wow, just muting me. No,
I did. I muted everyone.
You were just letting us build a moment of suspense. Boots isn't even here, Jebro. He can't even try to interrupt you while you do your intro.
I know.
You have to learn to trust again. And unmute us so that I can interrupt your intro.
I have to learn to trust again. That's so true. That's so true. That's so true. Excellent. Well, what Rukuru was saying as we were coming in is I can't remember actually. I remembered and then I forgot, but it's fine.
Nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day, all the time. It's a week this week. And I'm glad that I'm around friends that don't judge me. Hopefully.
Definitely here for that, darling. Yeah, I'll be judging you, don't worry.
Yeah, we won't judge you, Jeb. Yeah.
Cool. So hello everyone and welcome to the podcast. I am ready with my half ham sandwich on the floor and also the potential for a sofa to be delivered during the podcast. So it's going to be a wild one. It is the review, the final part because we thought we could do it in 1 week and I don't know how anyone thought that was going to be possible. It was mostly me. So we're going to finish it today. So this is technically part 2 of the End of Dragons story review. And Otterscotch and Harold are joining us this week. Harold, aka Fornax. Boots and Kroof are absent in a bowling tournament together.
I wish that was true. I wish that was every fiber of my being and that we could watch them both be in a bowling tournament together.
We could commentate it.
I believed you. I feel so foolish now. You have lied to me.
You're upset. I mean, maybe we can just get them to play a bowling game. Do you remember that Wii Fit game?
Make it reality.
Bowling? Yeah, they could play Wii Fit bowling. It's very old now. I don't know. I don't think that's around still.
I like this. I think this is good, and I'm glad we've made this decision for them while they are away.
Yes, yes.
This is why you got to be here, because otherwise you get volunteered for things.
Yes. Well, Kroof is now a professional bowler. Boots, you could probably like get that from Boots, but like Kroof, you wouldn't have thought they were a bowler. I don't know. Not saying that bowlers have
I thought he'd taken up
specific
pole dancing. I thought that's what he was doing now, pole dancing.
Oh, yeah. Pole dancing.
Yeah, it's all that Canadian spirit. It's just like whoop, right up the pole.
I would also like to see that very much. That would be also really good. But I need to take it back like 2 seconds in which Jebros said, Boots looks like the kind of person that would do bowling tournaments, and then just blasted past it.
I don't know.
I don't know whether or not this is an insult or a compliment.
I just feel like he wears shirts like that. That's all. It's bowling for soup. I don't know. I feel like they would.
Fashion sense.
I feel like he would look good in those shirts. That's all I'm saying. I mean, if I was good at bowling, I can't because of my hip, you know. But like.
Right. Yeah, because of how old you are and how bad your hip is. Yeah.
Yeah. And my hair. Like a severe lack of hair. Actually, that would make me a fantastic bowler. Okay, so. we are going to do a mini intro this week because. Why not? We didn't do it last time or the time before, but Otterscotch and Harold are here as well, and I want to give them another opportunity to do that. Also, because I'm noticing that we are getting significant amount of views on podcasts right now for some reason, episodes. Like, we're hitting episodes are like 4,000 or 5,000 views. And they're old episodes. So for some reason, people are starting to pick up on it. So thank you for watching.
Hello, future listeners.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that we do the intros so that people can hear the people when they do the stuff. Oh, Scotch, what do you do where you do it? Tell us.
I stream at Otterscotch on Twitch. I do for right now just Guild Wars on Tuesdays. When the weather calms itself down, I will be moving back to needle felting and other variety.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Show it for longer. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is wool. This is all wool that you stab into submission to make it the thing you want it to be. It's really fun.
It's very cool. So what would you call it if you've got like audio only people? What would you call what you just showed us?
Oh, okay. So it is. I made a little pink quaggan mini out of packed wool. So it's
That's
it's
awesome.
kind of soft, a little bit squishy. They're very fun.
Please tell me you have an Etsy store and I can buy that.
Soon.
Thank
Soon.
you.
Oh,
Let me know, please.
Yes.
There you go. Already selling it to the
You guys-
people on
you
the
guys are
podcast.
getting-
This is great. We just need
Take
to
my
have
money, take
oh,
my money.
wow, you have a money emo now? Yeah, do you do that? Do you do the whole like, yeah. Like
Oh yeah, shake it, baby, shake it. Yeah.
You're such an English person.
Thank you, darling. I appreciate that.
This is why I do this. Okay. I do it for the Quaggan Bart Wiggles. Crichton Herald. Oh, did your eyebrows move?
I saw that. That was good.
Oh my god, the eyebrows move as well. No, this is amazing. That
Thank
was
you.
good timing. Okay. You might as well tell us what you do and where you do it then as well, Phonics, honestly.
I'm Vonax, the Crichton Herald. I have a YouTube channel called the Crichton Herald where I make Guild Wars 2 and other content for gaming. At the moment on the channel, there's a massive. I posted 24 tiny mini new player guides for people coming in on
Wow.
on Steam. So
Cool.
pop in and have a look. Yeah, I have been busy.
Good job.
I also stream occasionally. There is
Yes.
a 3.5 hour stream up on my channel, which is basically a new player guide all in and of itself. But I do go
Awesome.
horse about halfway through. That's it. There you go.
Okay. Well, check out the Crichton Herald on the old Twitches as well. All the information is given in the description below. Doing this hand thing. Thank you for joining us as well. Last but certainly not least, Rookery is here as well. Tell us what you do, where you do it.
Hello, I'm Rookery, aka Rook. I don't know if I look like a person that would be assumed to be a bowler, but maybe I do, and I'll leave that to all of you to decide for yourselves. But if you want to, watch and hang out and, form an opinion of that yourself, you can find me over on Twitch at Rookery, Rookuri. You can also find me on YouTube at Rookery, spelled the same way, and on Twitter at Rookery_. I am usually live on my own channel over on Twitch 2 to 3 days a week, and we do various stuff there, content, activities, giveaways, all that kind of stuff in usually Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy 14. And then you can also find me 2 days a week, one of which is on this podcast, the other of which is on a Final Fantasy 14 podcast, Aetherite Radio, on Friday and Saturday. And then I usually try to get at least one, sometimes 2 YouTube videos up a week, depending on what the rest of our streaming schedule or special events are like. So whatever we're doing, wherever we're doing it, it's always great to see you.
Awesome. That was boom. Sorry, while I was doing that, I was many looks on my face. Like, I was just looking confused looks on my face while I was trying to find, because I'm using cruise footage and I'm still allowed to use it, they said, to basically give us a little bit of a guide as we're kind of going through things. And I've lost where I am. I wanted to go through a little bit of the Minister Lee fight, I think, and just get the opinions of Fornax and Otterscotch, because I think we maybe rushed through a little bit towards the end there, and I wanted to maybe go back and also give us a little bit of a warm up and getting back into it and kind of getting excited and talking about the things again. So also it just gives me the opportunity to talk more crap I guess. So we're going to go and do that. But if you're new to the stream or new to the show, make sure you check out the things in the description, check out our Twitch channels, and welcome. Chuck a follow on Twitch as well. I massively appreciate it. And I am Jebro, the person who puts this together weekly, and it's been very fun and also sometimes challenging for myself to do. But it's fine, and everything's here and everyone's good. But yes, so we're in this part of the story, and also I have notes, but they're on my cell phone, so I've run out of monos, everyone. It's going great. We're at the point in the End of Dragon story, so we're like Act 3/4, kind of moving between the two. And thinking about this, so actually, it might be good to ask Fornax maybe and Scotch before we kind of got up to and just past Anchor fight, and towards Minister Lee kind of fight. Like that's where we are. We kind of finishing that. Is there anything like in the story where you were super like, yeah, this was an amazing thing that I loved? And is there anything you didn't love up until that kind of point, and maybe you would like to share at all? And if there isn't, then that's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm scrolling back through. See, I read the notes past where you said we'd talk about, but not before.
Just remembering it, because it's been a while, so it's like, that's the thing. Like, and maybe because like the ending is pretty big, and so it's daunting to to go back and then think, oh god.
It was a lot happened in this expansion story, and honestly, it kind of felt like at several points that could have been the story, and I would have been satisfied. So, like, just the whole arc with Minister Lee, starting out with that, that could have been, and the way they did it was, they could have brought that whole, what is the word I'm even looking for? Kind of investigative noir. It could have leaned heavier into that investigating the corruption in society story even more. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I mean, I'm hoping for lots of Rama going forward. He is the voice actor is amazing, and the character that they built in the game is just so intriguing and interesting and open and kind, and he's sarcastic in a friendly way, which I appreciate. He has an air of the old Kanek about him in his a little bit, and I like that. I like a bit of an edge. But I did see the battle coming from like a mile off. It was fairly obvious
Minister Lee fight.
That Minister Lee was going to fork up our shit. Obviously.
Okay.
I think my big regret with it is that, like I said, it could have been the entirety of the story and been a very satisfying story. But it kind of took second stage to, the world-ending consequences we were facing. So I didn't care as much as I wanted. It wasn't as satisfying of an end to that arc. If I had been... Because you can tell with Minister Lee, they could have given us even more moments to really just to have it be so satisfying to take him down.
So it could have been. You said like it could have been like a living world. Part story, like post End of Dragons, possibly.
That actually could have been terrific.
I mean, I'm sincerely hoping that. Oh, sorry, Rob.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! Go!
Oh my god! How dare you! Boots, what are you doing? I mean, sorry.
I'm sincerely hoping that we actually get more Lee. I think I said this the last time I was on. I don't want that to be the end of his story, because I think there can be redemption for people who take the wrong path. And I think that especially like games like Final Fantasy 14 are fantastic at taking the villain, who we see as a traditional villain, and giving them life and depth, understanding why they're behaving the way that they are, and they give them a road back to the place where they felt that they were in the first place, in the right side of history.
Right.
And I really want that for Lee. I think he could be it could be a redemption arc for him, I hope.
I mean, there are so many ghosts in Cantha, literally and figuratively, The idea that Even to this day, although we made it through the era of Shiro's return, and if you played Guild Wars 1, you conquer that. But then as you move forward and as they got the sort of little cherry on top stories that they did at the end, the rise of the Ministry and the Ministry of Purity obviously led to this, racial cleansing and all these other things that were really awful that happened in Cantha. And coming in now where we are, there is this heavy sense of history. And one of the things I do love about Lee is the fact that, as we have seen in our own world, right? Just because historic steps have been taken to bring equality or to, open up the world or legislation or things like that, it doesn't always change everyone's minds overnight. These remnants of these, persecution and all these other things that still exist in society. And I think that's one of the things that is really fascinating about this narrative. We talked a little bit last week about the fact that I think both in Kaineng City and then also a little in Echovald, although there's a lot if you dig around in Echovald, I think they both have such fantastic, an incredible NPC cast. In Kaineng as well, we have Yao, who I felt like was a little underutilized this expansion as far as the actual story beats go. And that also would have led so beautifully into the gang conflicts in the Echovald, because Yao has ties to being a former gang member and all these other things that sort of happened, right? So to me, it's one of those things where I think the Lee thing, I loved it. I think as it is, it's a fantastic concept. I do think that fight with him is incredible, but I think they could have given us more story beats in Kaineng, in particular, where we got a little bit more of that noir investigation. We learned about what was happening in the city. We got, even more of a sense of what might just be simmering beneath the surface of this polite bureaucratic society, right? And I think that would have set things up for this, betrayal from Lee even more, where we realize that yes, it's not just about figurative void magic in this world, it's also about the darkness that still lingers within various groups and people that has to be confronted, that has to be constantly brought up and or learned from. So I think it's great, but I do agree with everybody in that there could have been more support, particularly in those zones for those stories, because the Blackout story on its own doesn't really further that narrative as far as a meta goes, right? So I think that they could have put more in there story beat wise, a little mini journey even in the expansion for that. So
yeah, there was a lot. I think that's a good point, because I think there were times, and I think last week maybe I didn't feel that way, but after a week now I'm thinking and looking back and also watching Proof's footage and also writing the notes for the thing, and then remembering how much there really was going on through this. There were so many stories, there were so many small stories that were just part of this whole, which was what would have meant if we didn't have this specific thing, and it would have made a difference. Would it have made the overall overarching just the main theme, would it have harmed it? Would it have taken away from it? Would it have added to it if it wasn't there? I don't know. I think the fight, part of me, when you're talking about the fight, I was thinking, I wonder if they made the fight and they were we want to put this in now, into the story. Do you know what I mean? I wonder where they come up. And they obviously they make the story first and then they make the fights and everything like that. But then I'm thinking, is the fight better than the story that's there? Was it needed? All this kind of stuff. And I think Kroof and Boots got me thinking about that last week. Because I was I really did love playing it. I've only done it a few times, honestly. But it was fun when I did it. And just even solo when I was playing on stream, that was quite good as well. But I'm thinking there was so much going on. I was just damn, where am I? Who is who in this story? Who's the baddie now? Is Minister? Should I feel sorry for him because he's just a bit of an arsehole? We might need him later because the whole world is going to crap. And it's it is, but then literally the political side of it as well. So it's these. I don't know, there's just a lot going on. I feel like I was kind of overwhelmed a bit. Maybe it sets up all the living world stuff that's coming up as well. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think it's interesting that Lee actually goes against the kind of the the foundational law that that saw all the peoples of Cantha come together after Zaitan's rising. Because it was then that even after the Ministry of Purity was like knocked down, there was still xenophobia towards the non-human species. And when Zaitan rose, they interceded to help the people, and that broke down all the prejudices. And when Soo-Won came in, and she interceded to save as well, and they had this big moment of coming together. And Lee is acting directly against that kind of prime directive that his culture actually represents, the history that he's trying to protect. He's actually fundamentally going against it, which I think is interesting narratively and might give him a narrative thread to be able to get back onto a more even keel and find his way back to a better place.
You think there's a redemption arc for Minister Lee?
At least there should be an attempt at it, I think. But
yeah.
I mean, that would be in
so.
a Living World episode. But I mean, there's so many things that I want to explore that they never, so many narrative threads, you know, that
even
I'd
just
love to
like
explore.
If he were given another chance and completely biffed it again, could be interesting. Like maybe he escapes prison and goes on another subversive campaign trying to gain, you know, political power again because he lost it all. And, you know, that could be interesting. There's a lot of opportunities with him still.
I mean, Trin got
there
it.
are.
They got like a little bit of a,
It's it is. I mean, like you said, the parts of history that we choose to identify with as like groups within a society, I think is very interesting for next, especially given the, like you said, the precedent, the fact that, you know, supposedly here we are in Cantha and, you know, oh, we have, you know, reevaluated our society in many ways. And then there are these bits of the past that I think people hold on to for whatever reason, be that they feel a sense of insecurity, they look to amass their own power, you know, they look to a time that's more pure in Canthan history. And yet I think much of that also makes sense because here they are on the threshold of, especially as the commander comes in and all this other stuff, right? But the threshold of having their world drastically changed. What happens if we do open up communication with the outside world again? There are some who will embrace that and some who will turn against it, some who view it as a threat or a threat to like the way society currently is. And Lee is fascinating in that regard because he is one of those figures that I think stands on the threshold of the new and old. And, you know, can he learn from it? Does he deserve a redemption arc? Who knows? Like, it's one of those things where I think it is illustrative to see in media characters that have prejudices who can learn and who can change, you know, because so often we see like one dichotomy or the other, but we rarely see characters that I think are confronted with certain aspects and then have a meaningful change, even if that doesn't redeem them, right? You don't have to have redemption or forgiveness, but to learn, to change, to grow, to form a different opinion, I think is a very worthwhile act and good to see in game. I don't know, like, if it's so tough because it's like, on one hand, I think they could do a lot more with him. On the other hand, I'd be fine if they just left him, honestly. I mean, I don't care. I think there's enough other interesting characters in Cantha that we could explore as we move forward. But Lee was one of the story beats in the expansion that I felt so good. We talked about with Boots, like the fact that when you're in that elevator ride and you have that moment where you start to realize you're about to be betrayed, that you're being taken to this arena. All those beats were so good. It just felt like we were missing the 5 beats before that beat or something with him. But I understand like why he was there. Again, like the world has to come together to face a threat. Cantha itself has to reflect its future and embrace it. And it is not an uncommon thing in our world, although it's sad to say, to have the world be crumbling around you, to have these issues that are so dire, and to have people in positions of power who think that, you know, well, we're just going to basically add to this blaze, but it'll be fine because when we get control, we'll do it our way. Or, you know, it doesn't matter if the rest of the world is at stake or our people might suffer for it, so long as in the end we come out on top in whatever way seems most beneficial to us. And so I think in those regards, he plays an important part of the entire tapestry of the story. But I think that kind of, it's all there, but I think it would have been helped by having a few more supportive beats about that and what it meant for, him to be working against us behind the scenes in Cantha to achieve our goals just a little bit more. But I love his fight, and I think the moments leading up to it are really well done.
It kind of felt, oh, sorry.
No, go on.
No, it kind of felt like we got a glimpse into Rama's story.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to be a part of Rama's story instead of just seeing that arc, the end of that arc in his story. I guess not.
It's difficult though, isn't it? I mean, I almost feel like often when I play Guild Wars stuff, because there's so many characters and it's been so established previously, like if you didn't play Guild Wars 1, I think sometimes you do miss a little bit of, I think they do a good job at trying to introduce characters we may have seen, places, people, to a degree. I think there's a point here where, it might be nice to go back to have some living world stories where like kind of going back in time and they just have this thing where it's like, you live this story and you play this character like they did with Ryland. Was it Ryland who we did that with in the Saga? It was Ryland, right?
Pool of memories stuff.
Yeah. So like we went back and we found out why he was kind of how he got shaped to be how he was and like playing as him, but we still got our abilities. We still played with our class. We just looked like, a male Char. Which was really cool. I liked that. Like that was really, really good episode. There was some, some nice little things to find extra chests and stuff, which were fancy. It gave us a lot of back info that we didn't have because they couldn't deliver that in the episodes the way they had gone with it, because it was chronological order. And then they've nipped back and gave us those kind of beats like you were saying from earlier. So I would actually like to see that. And maybe we'll see, his faction come back and maybe through that way, maybe that's something we can do. Maybe, who knows? But that would be cool. I agree, actually. Yeah, I think there's a lot of history sometimes which is missing that I would love to know more about myself, even though I played factions and stuff, and I seem to forget things very easily sometimes. But yeah, we've kind of got the footage of the Minister fight up right now as well. And it was really, really cool. Like there was just a lot of different mechanics. It was fun to play. It was good to hear like the voice overs as well from, there was Rama, there was Lee, there were the guards as well. There was a story in there. The fact that he's like a blade sworn, so he's one of the classes in the game. And it was just cool, like the surroundings, like you're on the top of Kainang as well. You're really, really high up. So there's this danger of being on top of this building, which was really emphasized very well. And this kind of holographic bridge, which was very cool. So they were and the movement between different platforms. They love platforms in Guild Wars 2. I mean, I know they love it in Final Fantasy 14 more, but like Guild Wars 2, it's just platforms. But that's like an arena. It makes sense. Like it just makes absolute sense.
It just
at least
clicked.
Cliffs, yes.
Oh, it just clicked that this is the rooftop that they had in the trailers when they first introduced. This is that rooftop, anyways.
I don't know if it's the fight. It could be. I'm not sure if it's the fight, but I think it was reminiscent of, yes.
When they introduce Rama and he like jumps down on the rooftop and kills the mech, and
it's I love this fight, and I mean, every single game, no matter what, every single MMO, if you have these kinds of structured boss fights, you have an arena. Because, I mean, like, you literally have to have a place to fight, but also to, like, a space that is within your control to navigate and execute various mechanics in, right? One thing I do have to say about Guild Wars 2, though, is that I think they keep their arenas much more interesting than many other games. The fact that I mean, when you think about all of the diversity from this fight, where you're moving between these two different platforms, right? And then you have enemies that are doing things at range outside, like the sniper and like the different things like that. I think all of that is fantastic. When I think back on various raid fights, like the Largos twins, where you're moving between those platforms and splitting off and taking the water up and down, or any of the other, numerous fights that we have. Gosh, even though it's kind of annoying, the Bandit Trio is a very interesting arena setup with the different areas that you interact with and the things you need to do. Versus many other games where it is circle on the ground. That's it. Nowhere else. Only circle or square. So
circle, square. We want some oblongs in there. You know, some hypotenuse triangles. I don't know.
No dynamic use of space, no sense of movement in the fight, no verticality and platforms within it. And so it's one of those things where I think Guild Wars 2 does push that more than many other MMOs because of the unique masteries and mobilities that we have in game. And I think that this fight shines. Like, I love the different enemies, and they are all of the martial traditions of Kantha as well. Some new, some old. And I think that in and of itself speaks a lot throughout the fight. Lee, those phases where you're going to him and you're fighting, all of that I think is fantastic. It's a great fight, and all of the strike missions were really solid, I thought, in End of Dragons.
Very true. There was, I mean, you know, going back to the Scarlet fight, well, pardon me, not the Scarlet fight, but, you know, the Matron fight when Scarlet was there. I call it the Scarlet fight because that's the thing I remember the most from it. We were talking about, like, last week how, like, the cycle, we're talking about the dragon cycle. We're also talking about circles and how a lot of the stories are just coming back on themselves. You know, season 1, Scarlet's back, you know, in one kind of shape or form, and the different people and different things that kind of get, you know, maybe resolved. And we talk about, like, the ending later. And if you have not guessed yet, spoilers, major spoilers right now for End of Dragons, and everything in Guild Wars 2 basically right now, as we think about, you know, relationships that have been formed and then culminate in something at the end of the story, you know, the circle of things. So it's not just the cycle of the dragon cycle, it's the cycle of a load of shit that's going on in the game. And we're just like, you know, even with Timey and to a degree, and the illnesses that they have, and the assistance, you know, that Jade Tech, you know, is bringing to them, and their disability as well. So it's like there's loads of different things which kind of, there's helped, there's hindered, things that are being hindered a little bit more. The one thing to go back to Minister Lee, that I found with that story is they approached it in a way where it wasn't blatantly about not wanting to, about, like, you know, necessarily against races specifically. Like, it definitely was like that was part of it, but they didn't use the language in there specifically. So it was also very much about, you know, new and change and not wanting to change at all, like whether or not it was different people who look different or are literally different kind of beings. You know, there was a lot of, I guess, some ambiguity there as well to how you could read it, which I liked. And I don't know whether or not I would have liked them to have been more specific about, like, race and everything else, especially with the way the world is now, because I feel like there is a lot of lessons we can learn, but I think that's also dangerous. I know that storytellers do definitely have a lot of issues telling that story well, often.
And I think even just isolating it to the concept of cultural purity was in and of itself sufficient, because it is that us versus them, the thing that is different and new, that when they get so wrapped up in their terror of what that might do to the things they cherish, that is the danger. And it doesn't need to be more specific, because that's the core of it, is that fear.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
I love it.
True.
Because I think End of Dragons had every single thread. It had the threads. They're all there. It was just about how they wanted to present it. Because as I think about it and as we talk about it, right, there are a lot of kind of mentor relationships, parent or parental relationships represented in this expansion. Lee being a father figure to Rama, Yao, Maitrin, who, you know, obviously found, I think, a sense of purpose and direction and were taught many things by June.
Yes.
And then, you know, this idea as well of, like, not only cultural tradition, but, you know, how do we deal with, you know, confronting other things, be it our own past or be it, you know, outside forces, and how do those dynamics in our life in many ways mold us, shape us, or, you know, do we navigate them? And I love it because I actually think there's so much good stuff here that all works narratively really well with everything that we end up doing in End of Dragons, right? Why are the gangs formed? Like, we know that there's a history in Guild Wars 1 and in factions of these different gangs that operated. Why? For black market trade, because society itself didn't have a place for many people, because of poverty, because of, like, there are so many themes in that, right? And Yao himself is a direct, like, connection into that. And then everything that we would have learned in Echovald, or you do learn if you really go through and you really explore and you do the meta and you really go to all the camps. But, like, I don't even think that we had a cutscene in Echovald where we officially met either of the leaders' you know what I'm talking about, the faction leaders? I don't think we even had that, where we like met those two figures and what they meant, and why these, you know,
I think there's only
gangs are operating
during the end of the meta. I think there's only that, but it's not cutscene. I don't think. I think it's just the speech, like talking, like how they have to do better to work together or something. I think.
Yeah,
you have to really pay attention to understand what's going on
there. You have to stay there as well.
Yeah, and
most people are just like chest and go.
It's then extra confusing when you get to the end meta and they're leading those lanes and you're like, I literally never even met these people through the story itself. The open world is a part of the story in Guild Wars 2. You do have to consider it that. But again, having those directed connections, I think not only supplements the entire really actually brilliant story that they're telling here, but also helps us know where our attention needs to focus, what needs to be brought to our attention, all those sorts of things, right? And earlier, you know, Otter, you were talking about the relationship between Rama and Lee. Again, a sort of fatherly connection there. And although, like, Lee has these hidden prejudices, Rama, in many other ways, is, I mean, the future of Cantha, right? We talked earlier about how he's a little sarcastic, but he's really caring. You know, we've already met his like assistant, who's the April Ludgate of, you know, of Cantha, who could care less about tradition and cultural purity. But like, either these kind of like these power structures, these dynamics, these, whether it's bureaucratically oriented or it's something like the gangs themselves that have their own power hierarchies. There is a lot of brilliant stuff in this, and these characters have these very purposeful, you know, metaphorical, symbolic connections and great themes to explore that then again culminate in confronting Anka's question of why not just give in to nothing? You know, who cares about anyone? You know, it doesn't even matter. The world doesn't matter. Or chaos itself, where that force and Soo-Won, who has such a great love for the world and is literally the mother of the world, considers it worth fighting for. So like, these themes are all throughout the entire thing. I could do like a 5-hour analysis of it, but I think we lacked a couple of the guided artistic kind of cutscene things that made them all just come together really clearly for people. It's not that it's not there. The narrative team did a phenomenal job. It's just that you have to almost supplement with your own headcanon and fill out what you think they were going for in this, you know, like, because I think we missed a couple of those beats in those moments.
So you're saying that they're in the map more so than anything else. Like they're kind of hinted more so in the maps. I think you're right. I mean, it's like what Gears said as well, like in the chat, who done our wonderful art for the show. So thank you very much, Gears to names. Did say something which I kind of connected with. So this is the reason why I specifically, and I would love to hear some comments in the YouTube comments as well, if people do the same, and from you, all of you as well. The reason why I complete maps before I go on to the next map through the story is that very reason. It's because I want to know everything about the map I can possibly glean from it, even if there's a chance that they may not happen because events happen at different times because of different things. And, you know, there was different little mini dungeons and like that, which were just amazing. Echovald was a wicked zone. But like Gears was saying, went straight through the story, didn't really explore much of Echovald, and it's like, wow, there was so much in it there. Like there was the events, there were different factions, there was the
infiltrating the factions.
Yeah, infiltrating the factions, like being like, you know, a little bit of an operative. There was an amazing heart where you could literally pick your pronouns, and there was like, do you know what I mean? We didn't even talk about that. I think maybe we talked about it during Echovald. I can't remember.
It was an early one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, maybe it did. But like, that was a great heart. There was some just really, really great moments in that map that were good for just setting the scene and the pace of like what was to come. I felt like, in some just innovative ideas that we'd not really seen from them before. including the meta, you know, which was very cool. You know, when I played that, I was like, whoa, this is so good. I know when it's good when I feel like a child. Like when I feel like a child and my eyes go big and I'm just like, and my mouth goes wide and I'm just like, oh, it's like when I played not Titanfall for the first time, but that game that really failed and I just started firing off weapons. I was like, whoa, this is so good. It was just one of those moments, even though the rest of the game sucks. Like, Anthem, that's it. Anthem, yeah. Everyone knows what I'm probably talking about. Anthem just failed miserably. But yeah, like it was. And if you're up to this point in the podcast and you're like, what do? I would seriously go do what you want, but I would also just go and do the map first. Like doing the map completion is so good in between story. It really just depends how much you can remember and how long it takes you to do map completion, because it can be quite long.
Stick around and like listen to the dialogues, because you learn so much.
Just like background stories, and also sometimes you have to listen to it before the story can continue, because otherwise they talk over the top of each other, and that gets a little bit awkward.
No, I mean, the End of Dragons maps are masterful. They really are. There is so much hidden in them. There are so many things that are mechanically fun, that, you know, are lore enhancing, narratively enhancing. I think this has been a big question with Guild Wars 2, especially as we see more MMOs that kind of step into the space that perhaps are more linearly, cinematically story driven. Where Guild Wars 2 does that, but then they also offer this area of immersive world and action and exploration and, you know, in the moment storytelling that no other MMO I really feel has nailed in exactly the same way. I discover more every year while I go around maps that I've even been playing for 5 years in this game, which is phenomenal. I do think that we are maybe at a threshold where how they tell these narratives, they can keep pushing forward and exploring more. Like in Echovald, I saw in the chat that mention of the story beat where you choose one or the other faction and you have to do that heart. It would be fantastic if in that, you know, in that setting, when you went to that heart for the first time or something, regardless of what was happening with the meta, you did get some additional cutscenes. You know, with the Jade Brotherhood hideout, there's that whole hidden room that you can take a Jade bot to get to the point of interest and everything that's in there. I would have loved it if, like, as you explored, you got these little side quests almost, right? That, like, it led you over there and you could explore these different little vignettes. And when you got into that chamber, when you figured it out, you got a little cutscene about the Brotherhood and, like, you know, what was happening in that moment and what they were building and stuff like that, that would kind of set you up so that you would you would learn the beginnings of this war that was about to, you know, happen, the gang war. And then you would kind of know, okay, that's leading me into the meta. And then when I do the meta, this is how this manifests. Because Echovald, again, has some amazing themes. The idea that what everyone has created together in Cantha, because of many different reasons that have driven them apart, it is the greatest strength of Cantha. It's technology, it's innovation, it's people, it's culture, the way that they have triumphed over conflict in the past. And when facing new conflict, right, and a new threat that literally threatens to corrupt the fruits of their labors, the actual, you know, incredible ways that they've revolutionized life, when they come together, it suddenly puts into stark contrast for many of them how they have been, again, driven apart by the past and how they need to unite, how they need to come together to face this threat and take down, you know, this corruption in the junkyard, which is like the refuse of, you know, their societies, which they themselves are many times kind of considered to be the outskirts or refuse of society, with the sort of gang themes and the reasons why people might turn to that. Although, of course, we have something slightly different with the speakers, which is really interesting. But again, you don't really get that as clearly. So I think that it would even have like a couple more cutscenes in those little areas to anchor you in then what you would kind of propel into with the rest of the story. Or even just as you explore the map for the first time, take some of those points of interest and let there be like a little side quest chain that pops up or something, or a little cutscene when you first go into the village. That just gives you a sense of the people in place. We're so close. End of Dragons is some of the best cinematics, I think, cutscenes out of any of the expansions. But I think they can even push it further and it won't alienate players that are here for more of that action, you know? I think it would just enhance it.
They could even just lean more heavily into the triggered dialogues, the proximity triggered dialogues. Like it doesn't have to be cutscene, but if you're a little Jade bot, you're snooping on the Jade Brotherhood, and you intercept messages that it starts playing, so you can hear their leaders talking about, okay, so this is going down, this is going to go badly, we got to be prepared for it to go way sideways, just because the cutscenes do, if you lean too heavily on them, it takes control away from the player in the game and leaves you feeling kind of out of your immersion. But they've played with a lot of ways to give you that information already.
There's not many games that do that, I guess, is there, really? Like, they don't really let you wander around and kind of glean these extra bits. Phonex, what were you going to say? You've been heard from me for a while.
I get the vibe. Remember when we first played Heart of Thorns? We did Dragon Stand, and there were only 3 paths, but there were more commanders at the end. So you had the Nightmare Court commander, you had a Quaggan commander, and those were stories that they wanted to tell, but their ambition exceeded their capacity. And I kind of get the feeling in Echovald that kind of happened. That coming into the big meta map, to the Dragonfall map of its, onto where we face Soo-Won.
Yeah.
I feel like they just the rubber met the road, and they had to decide, what do we do, what do we keep, and then the practicalities of actually making a video game and herding a million cats comes into play. And that's how I think that's what happened with the stories and with Echovald. 'Cause as much as I like Echovald and I think it's beautiful and cinematic, it isn't. I love all the hidden dungeons, and I love the interactions and everything, and I love the allegory that the captains of industry destroying the forest. Yeah, that those refuge dumps are literally the city poisoning the land. All that technological advance in the city is at somebody else's cost, and everybody's paying for it, whilst a person at the top is reaping all the profits. Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly difficult allegory to make out, is it? But yeah, for all that, I did not particularly like to be in that environment, because it felt like a million corridors and very oppressive and enclosed, and the narrative compellence of the characters, their drivers, were not clearly represented. And it's one thing to have environmental storytelling, but if I, who loves the lore, miss the story going through, then you need to deliver it better. Because I know that I know about the interconnected relationships of some of the characters, but the playoff between these two factions, although it plays out in a big way, it seems to be all bombast and no substance. It seems to be performative rather than a visceral reaction.
What, like an accompanying thing where it could have just been more impactful? Is that kind of what you mean?
Well, I mean, so they're at each other's throats, and we see that viscerally everywhere we go, right? Yeah. They're in combat, and they're in combat with us just for daring to exist in their space, which is fine. But there's when you get to the map and they're working together. When you get to the end map where we face Soo-Won and they're working together, I was like, why, what happened? I did the meta. I did the better, but there didn't seem to be that much unity about it. There didn't seem to be that much. There was not enough to kind of hang. They didn't provide the framework to hang the story on that they were trying to tell. But I mean, considering how much story they did tell, this is kind of and we're nitpicking around the edges. We're being pedantic right now, right? But I would have liked.
That's exactly what this podcast does.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that one counts as pedantic, because it is a major thing leading into this entire map. That was a big deal. These people are at each other's throats, and for centuries they have been unable to work together, and then all of a sudden,
yes. And there's so much There's so much. I agree with literally everything that you said, Crichton, because the Echovald Forest is a map that I personally, there are so many parts of it I'm obsessed with. I love the Tengu village is absolutely gorgeous. All the little hidden areas and the hidden, religious sites and the little places you have to
Vosberg
duck
as well.
down and go
Is it
through the
Vosberg?
thickets. And I think
The
it's such a
ruins are
gorgeous
beautiful.
town.
The ruins are just
Yeah.
gorgeous. I don't want to take away from the artist.
Yes.
It's spectacular. Yeah.
There's tons of little lore. There's tons of incredible events. There's the fantastic god weapon. There's all these things in it that are so cool. But I agree with you, because if we just look at the narrative of Echovald, I can tell you, okay, there's a village full of Tengu. They live there. We've got the two groups.
I like fishing as well. That's an important part.
We have the Jade Brotherhood, who, as far as the narrative has conveyed to me, is made up of people who felt that the restrictions and control of Jade technology, as overseen by Joons' company, were not allowing them to explore the full capacity, be that even the risks or the perhaps more experimental side of that technology that could come at great cost. And so they wanted to use it for more their own personal gains and develop the technology further, and to push even beyond what the social and or the governmental or the corporation kind of things believed were worthwhile investments of research in regards to that field. So they wanted to have that and empower themselves with it and take control over it and do their own experiments in a place where they couldn't be directly controlled, because there's that whole rivalry as well between the founder of Jade Brotherhood and Joon, who used to work side by side and then split off.
Well remembered,
right?
I forgot about that.
So but here's the
Really
thing,
forgot
right?
about that.
These are tiny little things that I'm piecing together to try to give a sense of this narrative. Did I learn a single part of that by going to... No, not when I was in Echovald. One of the things I think was most distinctive to me is that there's some NPC who talks about, I think in the city, who talks about how his sister is estranged and is a part of the Jade Brotherhood. But what does that have to do with the story? I don't know. It's just dialogue I remember. And then you get the speakers, who I think were criminally underused this expansion, who I can't tell you, they're mad. They're mad that the Jade Wind made the forest petrified, and that they think mankind is a threat to nature.
True, light's done.
Even though
That's been
they
done.
have a history of being men and or people who turned into protectors and wardens of the forest. But what is their role? Are they, like you pointed out, Fornax, upset about the pollution and the junk that is now being dumped into the forest? I have no idea. I want their leader to step on me, but I don't know anything about her motivations, except for lore that kind of ties back to Guild Wars 1. And I can't tell you why she is. I mean, she's probably mad at the Jade Brotherhood because they are in the forest and they're experimenting with technology and further messing up all this stuff, right? But again, is any of this communicated to me? And then the really big thing that I think you pointed out is, if the whole narrative point of going to the Echovald forest was to escape because we were wanted, right? But then ultimately, I would assume, to bring in new allies to the fight that are crucial for the final meta in End of Dragons, then where is the moment where these factions, we understand why they were in conflict, and then they reconcile and agree to work with us? We don't have those 2 points in the story. Maybe we understand a little of their motivations if you do the meta and all kinds of other stuff and you really try and glean a bunch of things. But do we understand where they fit in larger Canthan society? Do we understand those relationships that I think are pivotal and supposed to be really important in providing their perspectives? Do we bring peace and resolution to them in a way that's clear cut and then justifies why they would help us in the end? No. And I think that is, for all that I adore the End of Dragons narrative, it is my favorite story portion, maybe except for Living Season 4 in the game. I think it's gorgeous and it does a lot of really phenomenal things. But Echovald feels like a huge gaping hole in this story. Like you said, where it feels like there was supposed to be more, but we just didn't. We needed some cutscenes, because Otter, while I agree with you in that I think immersive narrative can be so important, having artistic control and direction over something like a cinematic cutscene brings clarity to tone, to characterization, to conflict and resolution, to all of these things that I think we lacked in Echovald. And then, maybe had a few stumbles on, although I think Minister Lee's narrative is perhaps slightly more strongly told in certain regards. But I think there are some stumbling blocks as we lead up to the finale, personally.
Can I proffer a fix if any ArenaNet writer is listening?
I think you can just do that in the show anyway. That's fine.
Okay, fine. So
you mean some suggestions on how things could have gone differently?
Well, I mean, could have gone, could go. So I don't think that. I think a cutscene would be beautiful. That would be great. But what I think that you could do is when we go to do the different factions, when we go and we infiltrate the Brotherhood, and when we go and we infiltrate the speakers, you have an NPC come and talk to you and walk you through whilst discussing everything that's going on. So you're a new initiate. Welcome. This is what we believe in. This is our thing. And conversations could be snippets of conversations as you're walking past, and they could tell the story on the ground with just text. Even they could add it now. They could add it next week if they have a kind programmer. Because it's just a follow quest with text explaining to you what's going on in both factions, and then after the big battle, they come to our hub, to Arborstone, with Kunavang, and we mediate. We do the thing that we're supposed to be good at. We lead. We negotiate. We could bring in the Canthan representatives. We could bring in Kunavang. We could have oh gosh, why is her name escaping me? Jury and Cass there as their negotiators, and then we come together, and then we the player understand that this is a place of negotiation. We're building it for Canthans on the ground, for the people, not the powers that be. And then we understand the motivations going in to face Soo-Won as a united front, allied together.
Yes,
that would be my solution.
Okay, what's that? Sorry.
I suspect that the next living world is going to deal a lot with that conflict, and that may be why they didn't, because they wanted to make it feel rushed, like we weren't going to make things better. We were just trying to slap a band-aid on the hemorrhaging world before moving on to the smaller problems of the Jade Brotherhood and the Keepers. And because it really did kind of, that ad with the patch that they slap on a tank. That's really what that last rush felt like. Is the world is the void is hemorrhaging into the world in this great big gush, and we're just frantically fighting our way through the flood to slap a patch on it and just have enough time to save
that
things.
Happens a lot in a lot of stories and a lot of movies as well, specifically. Like, that is a big thing that I always say. It's like, everyone, it doesn't matter what you're doing over there, because it's not going to matter, because the whole world is just going to be destroyed. So your argument is not going to mean much. So let's do this thing, and then we can sort that out later, kind of thing. And they kind of do it as they're running down the lanes. They're talking. There's a lot of banter between the different sides. And there's a lot
of, we're going to be back to enemies in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. And then so you're right. I think maybe they will do that. And I think if they don't,
I hope
that's going to be. I think they should. I don't know if they're going to. I honestly don't know, because they tend to move forward. They tend to move forward a lot. And in terms of, there was a lot in the chat as well. And it's something. I think Rook wants to say something before I move on to this, but worth bearing in mind that was this a lot of nostalgia, like going back for that reason. Like, we're in Camphor, we have to go back to Echovald, we have to go to this place, we have to do this, that, the other. Like, was there a part of that where that maybe impacted how they told the story? Maybe it felt like they had to go back to the zones on these places in this expansion, otherwise maybe, they didn't do it justice or something, and that they had to kind of slot this stuff in. Like, it's just questions. I don't necessarily believe these things. I think it's just some stuff in chat where I'm thinking, maybe by the way we're talking about things, maybe Echovald didn't need to be in there, and was it just because of nostalgia that it was there? Nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm still confused by Arborstone. I mean, I don't understand why it's there. And it's nice, it's lovely, it's beautiful, it's pretty. there's lots of things to like, but why?
It's funny. Okay, so I played Guild Wars 1 Factions, but I didn't play it back in the past when everybody played it. I played it in recent years after getting into Guild Wars 2. And personally, for all that I have critiques about Echovald and narrative structure and things like that, I did not feel like Cantha as a setting was just a throwaway for nostalgia. I think nostalgia is definitely a reason to put it in. Yeah. I think that, saying that just because it might harken to players' nostalgia somehow cheapens it, to me doesn't feel particularly accurate either, because nostalgia is powerful. And I think we can all agree with that. Like, places we've been before, worlds we have connected with, franchises that we buy every game for, there's a reason that we want to play even an MMO where we can take a journey that spans years of our life. We want to have a connection and investment to something. For me as well, I didn't feel that it was inappropriate, because when we're talking about the dragons, we're talking about the creation of the world in many ways, right? And Cantha is, in and of itself, in the lore and in many other ways, the cradle, the womb of the world, of existence, of, we've learned that obviously, but it also, in more recent history, although this is still pretty ancient history, was literally the first place that humans created settlements in Tyria. So there are many things that happened in Cantha that, as far as like a full circle and a creation myth, correlation kind of theme in the story, that I think are appropriate to setting it here. Now, with that said, I do think that even if you are going to tell a narrative, right, where, Otter, like you pointed out, maybe it's not about creating full peace and resolution, maybe it is just like slapping the Band-Aid on and we're going. I think there are still ways, and possibly even in that scene, I love what you said, Crichton. I think that would have nailed, like, that would have been so good, because, even just having that war room scene, right? When we got Icebeard Saga, we saw the Char generals all, at each other's throats. Like, even if you're going to tell a story where people are only working together for their own selfish reasons and because they don't want the world to actually be destroyed, you can even show that in a scene where those factions just start like going at each other, and you have somebody like the commander or Soo-Won or Reen who intercedes and says, "Shut up!" Like, literally, it won't matter if we're all dead. So you have to work together. And that tension can even be an asset in the story. So I think Echovald maybe just didn't quite work for me, not because of nostalgia, but because I didn't artistically understand the greater way that they wanted to specifically use it in the narrative. I think the pieces are there, but again, if you're going to set it in this place of great history or stuff like Arborstone, right? I think there needs to be a very like reinforced narrative story beat about like, our traditions, our history, our past has divided us. But we can rebuild, we can hearken to those things. We can, even restore this great cradle of history, which is Arborstone. But we have to understand that we all live in a world that shares various pasts, various conflicts, various divisions, various problems. But we cannot navigate forward unless out of that past we create something new. And like, that's a good theme for me in there. But I don't know if I think the narrative always fully supports that in the way it was told. Later, there are shining moments where we see that, but in Echovald specifically, I think maybe it's not as strong.
I'm just puzzled at the amount of resources and time and development effort that's gone into Arborstone for such a seemingly limited use case, unless it's setting up for the seasons to come where we develop it further out. That would be my only thought. Do you
remember the live stream for that? Do you remember it? The live stream for Arborstone? It was like hours long. It was so long. I think Arborstone is the devs spending time on something that they really love about the game. I genuinely think that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it can be a little bit of a disconnection for us specifically, but it's basically a new hub, isn't it? I mean, it's the Eye of the North, right? That is an expansion.
Like they were trying to iterate forward on the Sunsphere Sanctuary.
Yeah, which didn't work, unfortunately. Because it was good for. You got to rebuild it a little bit, but it was never a hub, was it? Like I think they had that intention.
Located well.
Yeah, no, it was.
You
it was
couldn't
like
get anywhere from it.
It was awkward.
Yeah.
I mean, I was wondering about this too recently, and I think the biggest parallel that I could draw in my mind was that I had to stop thinking about things like Eye of the North and Arborstone being, I don't know, some massively pivotal thing. I mean, they are in certain ways, and our narrative of upgrading them is important, but when I started to think of them as just like, oh, they're an expansion hub. When you look at that in the greater scheme of all MMOs, literally every MMO has an expansion hub or like a portion of the game hub, you know? I mean, in 14, we always have one city where you can go to the trading post and one city where you can buy your tombstone and raid gear. And like those hubs, you will spend a great deal of your expansion time just going back and forth between like,
buying the daily things, doing that, yeah.
Doing daily things, turning stuff in,
Can I push back very gently against that and say that, for example, Final Fantasy XIV, that the city hub that we got to go to was a pivotal location in the story. It wasn't, and I don't see us getting a shit ton of quests spawning from Arborstone. Or did I miss them?
Post. I mean, if you think about where you went though, so if you think about where the void, I mean, there is a pretty big reveal in Arborstone. You could argue that maybe that isn't necessary, but I think they were guarding it, right? And that's where you find out about water dragons turning, like, you know, these dragons turning into humans. But I don't know if maybe that wasn't necessary there. I don't know.
I mean, that's one hell of a cost to set a stage, right?
Why not?
I'm thinking about like because it's always a balance. So they've got this narrative that they want to fulfill. They have a certain amount of time, a certain amount of resources, a certain amount of development that they can do. And I'm wondering why they put so much into a feature that just seems to be dirty word, time sink.
Wait, you were coming up with a dirty word for time sink?
I think it's
the dirty word of it being a time sink.
Oh, okay.
Right? rather than something like
but it's an MMORPG. I mean, time sinks are a thing. they just exist.
I think it's a feature that players do like. Let me elaborate. In the sense that building and customizing a base is not something that is like not desired in many genres or games. I mean, in 14, we have a few areas that are upgradable like that, like Dome and Enclave, Ishgardian Restoration, those sorts of things. And they are their own like separate side content little thing. It's almost like Guild Wars 2 wanted to combine both of those sorts of things and those kinds of concepts. Similar to how in Assassin's Creed 2, you rebuild that one town that's your like return to kind of hub. Kind of like how in Dragon Age Inquisition, you rebuild the keep. And I felt like the keep in Inquisition was a really great idea that also maybe fell short of manifesting in a really impactful way.
It's too big.
But I think Guild Wars 2 tries to do that, where, you know, your hub is a place that you almost consider as a player to be not just like a city that the rest of the story took place in that you can't really affect, but is like a place that you can upgrade and take a journey with.
You mean your home? Like a home for you? Like a camp?
Home, but not specifically a home. Yes, like a place where you set up shop temporarily and then had some kind of impact on the world. But all of that said, I don't think that your critiques about like, was this the best choice of that? Is that even something that we need? I think those are totally valid. Like, I absolutely do agree. I think Arborstone is gorgeous, and I'm not at all biased because my NPC is there if you upgrade it. But I actually love Arborstone, and it's become one of my favorite hubs. But do I think they could have done something just as well in Kaineng? Do I think that we even need that full upgrade mastery track if there were other areas that they could have worked on instead? No.
Maybe giving us some portion of abandoned Kaineng. Because there's the whole drowned city that they're dredging up that we could have.
Yeah, that would have been cool. I like that. That's my favourite part about Kaineng, to be honest. I get bored of all the city bits after a while.
I wonder why they didn't. So we've got all this wonderful tech in guild halls whereby you come in, it is a literal ruin, and you, through your efforts and resources, you build it up, and you get these beautiful, like, transformational cutscenes where. So I'm wondering why if they wanted us to have like an emotional connection to Arborstone, that might have been a sort of a good route for them to take. Have this existing technology, and you can have it instant so that different people see different stages as they enter it, because it is a hub. But that's entirely possible.
Already, right?
It is what they do.
That's what they do.
So the technology's there, and I would have been far more interested and invested to, even if that was the entirety of the story, would be me putting my resources and time in to actually physically rebuilding this place, rather than just spawning resources which are mundane, to say the least. You know? Sorry, guys.
I'm gonna sway us back into an area of things we haven't talked about yet on the podcast as well, story-wise, because we actually have a lot to talk about, because it is the biggie parts of the story. I think, and this is why it's almost good that I guess the Boots and Kroof aren't here, because it's always good to get different people's takes on things. So sometimes, like, obviously I would love them to be here, but, like, you know, we all have different thoughts and ideas, and this is what's good about it.
What I'm hearing is I'm better than Boots, and I totally agree with you there. So
okay, fair enough. I did not say that. Phonax, you cheeky person. Look at that grin. As you held the heart, there was that thing, and it was just like, my dastardly plan has come to fruition. I have replaced Boots. It's gonna
happen.
What was I going to say? Okay, yes. And there's loads of talk in the chat about Kaineng and being a city, and I think there's so much more we can talk about. I think I'll do a looking back at End of Dragons and the different things we could glean and also get done, especially with guilds. Guilds is a big thing. I think we need to do another podcast on guilds and really flesh out how those systems could be better, is the word I'm going to use.
Fleshed out.
Yeah, fleshed out, home instances, housing, stuff that the game is missing that could really, you know, cling those people on like hardcore, like get them in the door and keep them. And that's another conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift us forward a little bit. And we've fought Minister Lee. We're on the End of Dragon story. This is where we're going now. And then we're going back to Seton Province. We go and see Soo-Won, and they are like corrupted by the void. We're in like the dream. I'm going to try and find the footage as well, so that's a little bit more helpful rather than me just talking about it, because it's good to have this bit of information. I'm currently looking at. God, there really is. As soon as I flick through this act, I'm like, there was Anka fight, there was Kanak, there was Minister Lee, there was all of this stuff like in one block, and I'm like, damn, this is just overwhelming just looking at it.
Very
honestly.
fast-paced, kind of scattershot. All these things just kind of thrown at us all at once.
Yeah, and it makes me think I'm on the wrong video, but it's all in the same thing. Like it's all in this. It's really all in like 45 minutes, 50 minutes of like Kroof's video, and I'm just like, Jesus, really? That did it all happen then? Okay, so this is where we are. This is the
I have a
now.
question before we begin. Am I actually spitting into the mic? Is that a noise, or is that something else?
No, it's like spitting facts. It's like it's like a saying. No,
Sorry,
you're good.
You're fine.
You're good. So that
Thank you.
they're saying you're like on fire. You're nailing it. You're spitting facts.
Shit.
You're thinking everywhere.
Lost in translation there. Sorry.
It's okay. Just got to be one of the cool kids for next, okay?
Phonax is just spitting everywhere too.
Yeah,
I
just
didn't want to say it. It was so
like,
awkward.
Words coming out of your mouth. Okay.
Definitely, that ship has sailed, guys, on the cool. No, sadly not.
You're cool to us. I don't know. To someone, maybe. To everyone. So we're in the dream, or in the palace, the mind palace, whatever it's called, and we're actually fighting the void here as well. I think we've gone back to St. Jebros. I'm not sure if Crew moved this. No, yeah, they did. And then we're in the mind palace. We're fighting the void. That was exciting. Like, that was different. It wasn't colourful and nice and lovely. It was literally, yeah, not good. Like, the void's there. Are we in? What I can't remember is this Soo-Won and Aureen are talking as well at the same time here.
Mm-hmm. We're just kind of watching the dialogue.
Yeah. Okay. Aureen asks Soo-Won to fight. Okay. Void Soo-Won replies, there is nothing left to fight. Okay, cool. Because they not okay, cool. But like, you know, I think by this time we know that kind of Soo-Won there's not really much hope for them right now, right? And then we have to, because I think throughout the story, and I think they do well with this, is that they always put this hope into you that Soo-Won might be okay, right? Like that it might be okay. Like there might be this little, you know, in those this reminds me of the CW for some reason, because their stories are very cheesy sometimes. And there's always like, no matter what happens, we're going to be able to be okay. Right, and I like that Guild Wars 2 doesn't do that, because I would just be mad. But also there is just it does instill the hope in you that maybe, you know, they will be okay and everything will be fine. There's little snippets of hope, and I think Aureen is always very hopeful, just in their in their being. They're just always this beacon of light. They literally are. And then throughout the entire story, the entire games, like while they've had a voice more specifically, they're always very hopeful about the good and what's coming up. So
she has to learn that. She has to learn that though in season 4, because she faces despair. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, her narrative through that is to face it regardless. And then, you know, ultimately her hope is hard won, which I think is a really beautiful detail about Aureen.
Mm-hmm. Also, being immortal, super handy, right? Yeah. That would take a shit ton off my mind if I was immortal. That would be amazing.
No, it's a good point. That is a good point as well. Like having to learn that lesson is important as well. Yeah, that's very true.
I know being immortal would be an incredible burden. Like that would be pretty rough.
I don't know. It'd take a while to be a burden, though, wouldn't it?
It'd take a while.
Just one lifetime.
These are the kind of problems that that I would like to have to deal with. You know,
I don't know. I mean, if you go and watch The Sandman, there's a character and there's a storyline in there which is great. That's all I'm gonna say.
Aureen's only 8 years old at this point, or is she 6?
She's young.
What dragon years compared to human years, though?
In dragon years, in dragon years,
is it
she's
like
a
dog
breath.
years? Like, you know, it's 9. How many dog years is it? Well, they say 9 years to one of our years. I don't know. I can't remember.
Don't say that. My dog's 14. Oh no.
That just means they're old. That's all. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But Soo-Won has been corrupted, and I think I felt that sense of hope too.
It's unfortunate.
It was sad. I figured we would have to actually kill her because it is End of Dragons. Yeah. You know what I mean? But
wow, Rugger is like going for the links here. We must kill her. If I don't kill a dragon in this story, I will be sad, and it must be Soo-Won, and it can't be Aureen.
Not living up to the title.
Wow. You all know me. I don't want them all to be dead. I was livid. I did not want to have to kill her, but I figured that for this new dawn, this new era, for Aureen to take her place, this was probably going to happen. My big worry was whether or not Aureen was then going to get corrupted and we were going to have to kill Aureen. That was my big worry at this point. But it is, I mean, I think it's very tragic because there is a sense of hope, right? Like you said, that maybe there will be something that we can do, that if Aureen can just come into her power and is able to somehow do this, if all of us together can, you know, turn back this tide, I mean, that's really the hero struggle, right? You know, despite terrifying odds, to have the hope and will to fight for a chance that you can find victory, or you can save someone, or you can save the world, right? So I was hoping that maybe we could, but also it felt pretty dire at this point. So
yes. Yeah. Okay, so now things are dire, as Rickery says. And we actually go back to Kainang and we go and see June because we're working on the extractor device, right? That's what we're trying to do. I lost a little bit of what was going on here. I forgot why June was so annoyed at the commander, because I remember this being a main feature of this, because Timey's still in the good books, but brought the commander in, and June was not happy to see
the commander had said, we're out of time, we can't make the extractor, we have to kill your friend and power source and the thing that has allowed you to rise to greatness. We have to destroy it all. No more trying to save it.
That makes sense why she may be upset. That's the reason.
We were wanted for something. When we left Kainang and fled to Arborstone, it's because we were like no longer welcome there.
We were blamed for Anka's crime.
Right, destroying the reactor. Yes, there it is.
Post, the things.
I believe that at that point, June still believed that.
Yes.
That we were just there deliberately destroying everything.
Okay.
Yeah. And that for whatever reason, whether it was that we thought, she was, abusing Soo-Won or whatever it was, we had chosen to do this. Yes.
She had all the probable cause.
Yeah. I actually will say, June's estate and this next story beat, I love this part. I loved this part.
I loved it so much.
So good. And the storytelling with her as a character, like we were just talking about how certain characters felt underutilized. Part of that, I think, is just the nature of the massive and actually really interesting and wonderful and colorful cast they introduced in the expansion. But for all of that critique that we had, June, I think, is one shining example of this expansion where her character, you take such a journey with her, and then to literally go into her home and like as you're doing these riddles and as you are trying to figure out, is she just like a huge jerk? Is she like corrupt and awful?
True. You're each sounding each other out, really.
Yes. And to have that tension as you literally invade her home and like I did everything. I wanted I did all the puzzles, all the riddles. I unlocked the kitchen. Good. I found her partner and her daughter, and like it's so awkward as you stand there in the kitchen like
did that bad,
they're just like having pancakes and they're just like, who are you?
And you're like, hey,
man, I didn't do that.
I'm not here to kill you, I swear, but like I really need to talk to your wife. And he's like, oh yeah, she's hard to talk to, but I mean, I love that he's just like, he's so sweet and kind and empathetic. And I love June's character because, again, the amount of times I think in anything where I have seen a woman who's like a brilliant inventor, who's a major powerhouse, who is characterized in many ways that we very often see like the Tony Stark character kind of not the whole playboy element, but you know what I mean, this like tech mogul that has this great power and is misunderstood. And
I was so worried that they were actually going to pivot and turn her into the villain by the end, because it's so easy to villainize. I'm trying to think of a way to put this. She was a woman. She was in power that she had clawed to get to.
Yeah.
She was very scientifically minded, which can in media be portrayed as cold and calculating and evil. And so there were so many points where they could have just pivoted and made her evil. But no, she was driven and aggressive, and those didn't have to mean she was the bad guy.
I think a lot of companies do that though, don't they? There's this portrayal of women like in this role of like, they must be bad if they're in power. Like that is a classic trope. That is a classic trope, especially 80s and 90s. Huge. Even now, it still is.
And that like a woman with ambition and drive who's willing to do what needs to be done has to automatically be like, those are undesirable traits.
He's bad. Exactly.
And then you watch all these other things like Mad Men, and it's like, okay, well, everybody's rooting for it here, so I don't get like what the issue is, And I found that really refreshing, and I loved like not only her voice actress's performance, but like those details in her home where you see her genius, but also her love, her compassion, her connection with her daughter. Like she's a mother, but she's not like motherly in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Her husband.
You can
is,
be a mother without being the
yes.
the classic homemaker in the house
course,
doing
yeah.
crafts.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
You can be
so
supportive in
refreshing.
so many ways, and it was just it was so good to see. Sorry.
No, I'm like just as excited with
No, you
babbling on
just
stuff.
keep going. I'm
I
good with
loved
this.
her character, and like you literally fight through her defenses, you know, to get to this final room. And I loved those beats where you're like, June, stop it! Oh my God, stop it! Like, stop sending these like stupid dumb robots at me. June, just talk to me. Like, just talk to me about your feelings. Oh my gosh, please.
Yes.
And it was such effective storytelling. And then when you get those moments where you learn from her, like Soo-Won was not just a mega battery. She cares about her as an entity. She cares. And like, yes, does she also care about technology? Does she also care about Cantha? Yes. Does she also care about
you're
her
allowed
company's
to care
profits?
about many things.
Yes. Like, and I loved that because like she is so desperate. She is so desperate to hold on to that hope. I can save her. I can put this together. We can fix it. We can get it back. And I loved that. I thought her story beats were some of the shining points of the expansion. So well done. So well told.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Absolutely. No.
So
You're quite. You're fine.
damn.
Go on.
Fine.
You're fine.
So I like June. I like the character. I like the paradigm shift. Turnabout is definitely fair play. Absolutely. I like that. I was raised by a woman quite like that. But I will say that she is quite happy to reside over a dominion of massive income inequality, which is one of the things that the Jade Brotherhood was pushing back against.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was one of the schisms between her and her protege partner, was that she wanted it to be exclusive, he wanted it to be inclusive. And in the story, when you're down on the street, there are Brotherhood tech that the lower echelons, the leftovers of society have to use because they can't afford her tech. So she is not as beneficent as she possibly could be, and it would be nice to see her have a realization rather than an Elon Musk moment where, you know, Jesus, Lord and mercy. But
I think it's difficult to tell that story, isn't it? Like, because if it sounds like you're trying to, this doesn't sound like anyone that exists on our planet, honestly. I mean, I can't think of many people other than maybe massive tech and moguls who try to influence and create some change without putting out products which, you know, people can't get access to, so they can, because of where they are. I don't think there's anyone. I think that's it could be difficult to tell that story. I don't know.
I think she's an allegory for Elon Musk, or perhaps the Elon Musk who might have been.
She's not that bad. I mean, sorry, though, you're assuming that you know, he is bad. I don't want to start calling people bad people, but you know.
In general terms, he wants to automate society and electrify it so that we're all in electric cars. Very good idea. He also wants to make sure that we don't have all our eggs in one basket. So he wants to colonize off planet. Entirely the only thing that we can do if we want to propagate our species beyond this planet and also avoid, you know, the cataclysmic end by an asteroid. 100% correct, right? Guy's not fucking about. He's right.
Yeah.
Is he a complete tool? Yes, of course he is. Yes.
She's almost like a conglomerate of different things. Yeah. I absolutely agree with you. And I love that she's not utterly benevolent, because this is by nature. And I think it's a very pointed commentary, like you're saying, about the fact that just like you brought up, if you have this massive power, if you have massive wealth, if you control the flow and release of technology just by nature for your own self-gain, for your company's self-gain, there's gonna be a lot of gray there. You know what I mean? There are gonna be great things that do benefit society, and there are gonna be entire ways that you have shut people off to vital resources that are more and more and more becoming a part of what you need to navigate or exist in the world, right?
It's the nature of capitalism. If you are making a huge amount of money, somebody else is paying for that.
Yeah.
Somebody down the line is paying for that.
And like, I think the big difference between her and Elon Musk is the fact that I actually know somebody who used to work at Tesla, and some of the stories that he would say about when like Musk came in on some whim, it was like ridiculous. Like
I can
Musk,
imagine, yeah.
I mean, Musk is in many ways completely out of touch beyond all belief. And also, like, I don't truly believe, although maybe I'm horribly misspeaking, but in and of himself is not a genius. Like,
No,
whereas
100% not a
yes,
genius.
like there were some, mentions of Bill Gates and stuff like that in the chat. I think June is almost more of a hybrid in that she is very rational. She is in and of herself, I think, very brilliant. So she has a vision and she has intelligence to, I think, manifest that vision. She herself was also born into a role that's kind of ambiguous. The idea of almost being like a bastard child. We saw with Togo that didn't make him completely horribly out of touch with the common people. But I agree with you in that there are complexities to her character that I would like to see the narrative confront. Echovald, the Jade Brotherhood, that gap we've talked about, I think would have been a crucial crux of that. Even Yao, if Yao had had some more moments to confront her, he admires and loves her, or they admire and love her, but there has to be, some kind of conflict there at some point in the thoughts of, again, how are we making this technology accessible? Or is Yao themselves part of how June is doing that by even bringing in reformed people, reformed criminals to learn, to have access to this technology, to be able to propagate it in a sense? Did June learn something from the fact that her partner left her after everything that happened? We don't know. Like, that's the big problem, I think. So I think she's a fascinating character, but not without reproach. Yeah, 100%.
I think it's an interesting narrative there that they can pull, because there's talk at the end of the story, sorry, jumping ahead here, that she wants to propagate out Jade Tech to all the other cities, all over the world. And I'm 100% for this. I don't like the idea of these static maps that the non-map, the non-city must only ever look like the non-city. If it's a living, breathing city, it should reflect what's happened. So there should be Jade Tech, there should be different people there. There should be change and evolution. And even if it's staged and masked off, so this part of the city changes only after you've done this point in the story, that I would love to see that kind of, so it feels more like the living world that they have been desperate to kind of create all these years. I would love to see that.
Kind of like they did in with Icebrood Saga with Drizzlewood Coast, where you progress further deeper into the map as you progress the story.
Yeah,
that was really cool, and I loved the way they did that, because it made it let you progress and change and push through, but it was all the same map in the end, and just really tied the story together. Brought it from the episodic feel when you look back on it and made it the story of this place in the world.
Yeah. I also really liked about this story beat. I would love to see the future with Jade Tech. And we've had little mentions here or there, well, maybe at some point Jade batteries will be around the world or things like that, which I, again, think would be really cool to see how that dynamically affects things, because, yeah, the world has changed drastically, and no culture is within a perfectly isolated bubble, right? Like, we live and influence each other, and technology disseminates, and how it's integrated into, different places is different as well, and how, different cultures or people respond to that is different too. So I'd love to see what the world could do with this new era of theoretical peace. But very specifically to June's, this story beat with June, I also really liked, I think, just with this, that this story beat felt so supported by many different things. Like the fact that even when you're first on Setong Island, there are mentions, right, about how, oh yeah, in the past it had this history, but now a lot of wealthy people live here. It's like, this is almost like their country estate or something, And then lo and behold, you come back to this moment with Jude. Where do you go? You go to Setong, and there's her estate, and it's this place that you've kind of seen even, above all the other kind of houses with all these defenses and all this other stuff. So I just thought this story beat worked so well.
It's Martha's Vineyard, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of.
You look puzzled. It's an island where rich people go to be rich people. Yes.
I was just gonna be quiet and let it go.
I don't know what that was either, so it's okay.
I could get the like. I got the general gist, but yeah. No,
there we go. This is what.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was like, I just got a little bit of what was happening here. So in June's state, I'm going to push you through this because we are really not getting very far, which is fine. I'm loving the conversation. But I'm going to push this forward.
I'll be right back while you do this.
That's okay. So June instance, there was all of the puzzles, which are very, very cool. There was a lot of puzzles in there. There was a lot, like moving the battery powers and then the platforms and everything like that. And then you had to supply the evidence to June, which I actually completely forgot. So you had to actually get to like her office where you like popped in the evidence. I can't remember what the evidence was specifically or what it was, but like, and then this chest kind of appears back up in her office. It was just very cool. Like I was like, damn, this place is massive. And this is what you did with it. Like, you've got these platforms and all this kind of stuff. It just reminded me of like old school, I don't know, like older games for some reason. They're just all of these different platforms and you get into this boss and you're in that house. I don't know, it's kind of, it's just very cool. So where are we? Let me think.
Was it the evidence that my train had got for us?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yes. Yeah, I believe so. I also liked the design in this house as well because it, again, drew, I think, on some of the inspiration sources that most of my knowledge on this topic comes specifically from traditional Japanese housing and homes. The idea of like modular multi-purpose rooms, where you oftentimes have like the almost like closets along the wall where various pieces of furnishings or like, you know, different setups and arrangements for the room are stored, and then at various points of the day you might take those out, change them, or if guests were over, things like that. So to see this kind of future, even though obviously there's a lot of inspiration from Korea and other, you know, cultures within Kantha as well, I thought this was such a brilliant way to almost realize the future and still harken upon certain parts of like a, you know, the traditional kind of sensibility that she has these platforms and these things and like the room stuff that all flips and changes. I thought that was such a cool vision of like a futuristic kind of style and inspiration.
Okay.
Okay.
Hadn't even thought of that. Yeah. Hadn't even thought of that.
It looks like my sofa's just got here. Great timing. I'm trying to think of something we can talk about for like the next 20 minutes to maybe half an hour while I'm not here.
I mean, we could talk about heading onto that final map. I mean, I feel pretty good like we've covered most of the story with your house. I don't know if everybody else does.
Moving from here to the next map bit. Let me think. Where are we? So there's a bit. This is a bit where June and Timey kind of they've got a lot of similar life goals. It felt like you know, different ways in their stories, very similar life paths, and they kind of in the end, you know, we make friends with June and they're going to help us. But there was a lot of still like this, even up until this point, it was like, she is like set on making sure that the future is set. Like they're going to be okay with batteries. They're going to be putting the dragon back in the machine and everything's going to be fine. And the commander doesn't want to do that. This is not possible. And then there's this kind of little cutscene. I'm gonna transition into the cameras because I don't want to go on some weird ads and stuff while I'm away. But yeah, if you want to think about going, even just the start, it's called Extraction Point. It's the final act. And there was the first person you meet called Saba, who was wicked. I did want to plant that into your head. If you remember, Saba was like was part of this like fan club or like part of I can't remember what it was called. What was it called? The
Crystal Bloom.
Crystal Bloom. Yes.
Yeah, fan club.
Is that I'm sorry, not fan club, but you know what I mean? Like
well, the way they behave.
Yeah, it was the way he behaved. Yeah, it was the way he behaved, I think.
Yeah.
But then filtering into the events. How about talk about the events and just the map in general? Do you want to talk about that? There's a lot you can talk about there, and then I can come back in for the story bit. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Right, I'm going to be back as soon as possible. Legends. So, events, you come to the map for the first time. Ooh, how did you feel about the map, events, and actually doing that whole fight? And all the things in the map. Good? Happy.
Yeah.
I
How
feel
long do you
bad
think
leaving.
it'll
I
be
feel
till we're
bad,
off
but I have to go
track
get myself
entirely?
stuff.
I do want to see a picture of the completed sofa. Just,
No, it's
Yeah,
in
we're gonna need
boxes.
that.
There's like 4 boxes outside the main building, but it's outside on the
okay.
road, so I have to go get it.
Good luck.
have fun. Oh, his poor hip.
Oh, geez.
Uh-huh. Like, don't.
Poor old man Jebro's gonna have to get those couches in. I hope he's okay.
And doesn't
no.
hurry too much. Because
Yes.
it's when you hurry that you hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
ask you
that's
ladies a question
Mm.
before we dive into the map? How happy are you with the amount of time that we got to spend with Soo-Won before the map?
Oh, this was a big point of contention on the podcast last week.
Oh,
It was brought up by both Boots and Kroof that I think they both felt that we didn't have enough time with Soo-Won. And it's tough because I think looking at what they did and what they had, the proportional amount of story beats and everything there, I think that they did give us enough to at least follow this through. I do feel like we got good moments with her, and I do feel like what we got was solid, and I think her voice acting also does a phenomenal job of that. She's just so beautiful. Like, she's so beautiful, and there's such a warmth to her. I will say, though, that I do feel like Soo-Won could have been with us for a whole nother expansion. And that
have survived this.
Yes, and that would have probably benefited much more the connection. She is such a pivotal character to be the literal foundations that the world was built upon. It's massive. And I wish at the very least that we had had a moment with her where we had found her before she fully loses her senses and just been able to speak with her, gotten that dialogue about her hatchlings and the other dragons, gotten all of those story beats and or something relevant with, Oreen, where she's learning from her and we're seeing an actual relationship really start to form between them as individuals. Poor Soo-Won, who watched all of her children lost to this corruption, who finally can speak to another dragon that isn't, a direct descendant of hers that is still in control and has been through so much, and that they could actually speak in this way, I think would have been much needed. I don't feel like it was a complete failure, but I do feel like we could have used a bit more time and some major things from her.
I think repeatedly we see ArenaNet. Funnily enough, their characters are almost too fleshed out. There's almost too much story to tell, and they don't slow down and savor what they've got. Because if they did what I kind of wish they did, we would not even have gotten to Cantha yet. We probably would barely be out of Heart of Thorns. But they have so many stories they want to tell, and so many very developed characters, and so much that they just kind of barrel through to just get through the story because they want to keep it moving always. But this could have been another one of those moments where we could have slowed down and we could have spent some time with her, and we could have had, or at least let Oreen report back about the time that Oreen is spending with Soo-Won,
I would have happily traded our time with Maitrin for Soo-Won. Not that I have anything against her story. I thought it was very interesting. I liked that it showed a human side to this character that has been very traditionally villainized because of what happened.
Just part of the nightmare.
Yeah. As a sort of a minion of Scarlet Briar. And I liked her, the fact that there was some vestige of not necessarily redemption, but humanization for her. I liked that. But I would much rather have had a journey. As I said, I think I said this the last time we talked about Ender Dragons. If they want to murder characters and they want me to care, they have to give me enough time with them to care. Or nut up and top tie me. Just do it. Just do it. If you know what I mean? It's just kill someone. Like, I still remember Air's death. It had impact and it had consequences, and it was a real gut punch. It was a real gut punch, and the betrayal that led to it set up the story perfectly for an antagonist who we really hated. No, nobody was hoping for Vowland to be okay after that point, right? And they did it perfectly well. So they can set up a gut punch like that, and they did it with Aurene. But they didn't linger on it long enough. I think I would have had us like hanging by our nails for at least one or two Living World episodes while we got our shit together. Like you said, drawing out that tension, drawing out the kind of agony, because that's we're here for it. We want them to torture us, and we want them to tell us stories that we care about and that we have an emotional impact for. So I was so sad that we got this beautiful, extraordinary, exotic character, and we got half a conversation with her before she got attacked by another NPC who we've only just been introduced to. Who I would have liked to have got to know Anka. She's interesting, and then we're off. It felt like the treadmill was going too quickly, and I was struggling to kind of narratively keep
emotionally
up.
Almost keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of that is a very fair observation, to be honest. I mean, Otter, you put it so well. This world, and one of the things that I love, one of the things that makes me love Guild Wars 2 so deeply is the fact that there is so much consideration for so many different details, even on the smallest level. Characterization, world building, the different things they bring to the table with the different zones, races, points of the world, fantasy lore, magic. There is so much in Guild Wars 2 that is phenomenal and on a totally different conceptual level than many other games. And it's one of those things where it's like, yes, I always want more. And I love that there is such a huge sandbox of ideas and concepts and characters here so that this world feels as massive and as epic as it is. That is one of the greatest strengths of this game, but it is also one of the greatest weaknesses, because when you are telling a story like this, and even in End of Dragons, I felt like they took their cinematic narrative to another level. And even that level wasn't big enough to encompass what they had put into this. Because we have so many fascinating characters. We have this whole new world that's new and old. So, obviously they're having to fill in some blanks about the history that's happened in it. We had a cast that was so brilliant, and I totally agree with you, Fornax, in that I really liked Mytrin's story, and I was, praising last week the moment with her apartment, and that kind of storytelling I thought was so moving and so beautiful. But do I also simultaneously absolutely agree with you that we could have completely cut Mytrin, I don't want to lose Yao as a character, but cut Yao, cut whatever else, cut Minister Lee, could we have cut a lot of that and still kept some of these anchor points throughout the narrative, and instead devoted a character arc to Soo-Won, made her the crux of the backbone? It's unfortunate because we had almost immediately come from June's culminating story moment, right? Which I thought was phenomenally done. But when you look at Soo-Won's character arc in comparison, I honestly think that June's was the strongest character arc of all of End of Dragons. But how does that tie into Soo-Won? How does that tie into Aurene? Obviously there's a literal connection in that she was part of the machine and blah, 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 and J-Tech, right? Which is important for the future. But yes, where is Soo-Won's arc? Characters like Navan would have shown in regards to what's the arc we're giving Soo-Won specifically. What are the ways she's connected to the world? What can her relationship be with Aurene that Aurene never had with her own mother? That Aurene never had with those she reached out to, with the dragons that she never wanted to kill and consume, but who from the moment of her birth, because of this prophecy and whatever else, had been after her. What does it mean for her in this world? If they had cut everything else and only focused that narrative, I think the emotional payoff, the absolute agonizing tragedy of having to kill Soo-Won, the voice line she has anyway, in that final battle are so well delivered and so heartrending as she like cries out to you. But if you think about if they had really honed in on this expansion and really made it that narrative, I think it would have been tenfold as devastating, you know?
I mean, I'm fascinated by Kunavang. I loved her in the original story. I wanted to feel the narrative impact of us actually having to kill corrupted sea spray dragons, but it's not there because we're not given the narrative thread. I would have from a personal point of view, I would have much happily come into the expansion exactly as you said, following Soo-Won, following her story, following her relationship with her champion. We could have been at the side of Kunavang all the way through, learning about the different races because she's there. She is literally the guardian of the realm. She could have introduced us to all these things, and then we could have had June's plot unfold in the living world that connects us to the next expansion because of all the consequences of Soo-Won's death. So we could have still had this wonderful CEO, interesting character with June, and Soo-Won's impact be what I think it should have been. But yeah, I guess I always sound like I don't like Guild Wars. I love Guild Wars. I really
the same.
do.
Where it's just because, okay, back to the salt sprays, where, you know, this may be partially my failing as the player, not, you know, as we do, blasting past things and missing dialogues, or the fact that I never played Guild Wars 1, so I don't know a lot of the things that they're referring to. But it did not even occur to me until like my 5th time playing the last meta what a big deal it was that we were killing a salt spray dragon in every stupid lane. Like, yeah. I didn't understand that this is the last of a fading race of dragons that was a big deal, and now I'm never going to get to know what a big deal they were because they're all gone because I just killed them.
Yeah, and there is a fantastic little bonus quest, but you have to, like, put 2 and 2 together, and Kunavang talks about the other last of her kind, and after you complete
finding that quest,
you have to find him. But again, it's like just like pull our attention to that even more directly, or even have us encounter several, like when you first come onto the map for the Jade Sea, it would have been so great if you were trying, like, you know, the corruption hadn't completely, or Soo-Won is like under the water and it's starting to seep up, and you start to like connect with some of the other salt spray dragons, or you get like right, and then you see them corrupted and have to kill them. It's like, I can totally see how there would be a gap.
Show me that they're sentient.
And that they're
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yes, and they played a massive role in Guild Wars 1. And Kunavang actually helps you save Kantha at that point, and like gives you her magic and gives you, you know, her empowerment. So I can see how you would not get any of that. I mean, I am obsessed with dragons, so I knew a lot about the salt spray dragons because they were an area of interest to me. But for most people who didn't, I think, there is a bit of a confusion there.
I don't know. I just feel like the narrative team spent their resources in the wrong places. Not that they didn't tell great stories, not that they weren't compelling, not that I didn't care and love the characters that they created. I absolutely did. But considering that the expansion name is End of Dragons, and what percentage of the story was about the dragon?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Although they've done it before with like Path of Fire, where we take this entire diversion to go explore Joko, and it leaves you kind of wishing the whole expansion were about Joko instead of a stray god.
Oh,
they've done this.
I really do.
Too soon.
Always too soon.
I really do think it is kind of what we're talking about, because it's funny you said, I really swear I love this game. I think everything that you always love the most you yourself will oftentimes be the most critical of, in a sense, because there are so many things that excite you and make you so passionate, and you want to see it all, and you want to do it all, and you want to feel it all, and the emotional impact is there. And really, Guild Wars 2 has a brilliant writing team. I mean, to even be able to juggle the sheer amount of characters, nonsense, multiple planes, the mists, the humans from outer space, the different races, the history of the planet, all the dragons, everything else. In many ways, this world, I am truly, genuinely, really, honestly grateful that they don't try to rein it in many regards, because I think we see a scale and scope, a hybridization of science fiction and fantasy in this world that is so massive, and somehow, even despite our critiques, continues to hold together. And like
I'm still playing it.
Yes, and continues to make sense. And like there are always going to be areas in this world that we want explored more. There are always going to be things within that, but they do a phenomenal job with what they have. And in the case of End of Dragons, I genuinely love this expansion. Like, genuinely, I think it's one of my favorites. The cutscenes, the moments we got, just like you said, are brilliantly told. Now, is there something to be said about honing in to really optimize your emotional impact of very specific things in your world? Yes. Will we ever 100% see that from Guild Wars 2 when it's a massive world that provides so much to people, like a giant buffet, but may not specialize in like one specific incredibly perfected dish that is, you know, the only thing they offer, but so well polished and so well done? Like, I don't know. But I think they've been constantly trying to refine how they tell stories while still creating this sprawling tapestry of a world. It's extra tough because I think within MMOs, you never know how many more expansions you will have to tell a story, and or, you know, you don't want players to get bored with something. And when you're coming up on 10 years of this being the crux, I think there probably was a lot of pressure, even from the base, like, let's be done with the dragons. And I think in many regards, a lot of the things that players, you know, have been like, oh, I didn't feel like we got enough time with Jormag and Primordius. I didn't feel like this, and this, right? At the same time, those same people oftentimes were the ones most vocally that were just like, can we just do something other than the dragons at this point? Like, what's the future of the story? And 10 years in, that's fair. You probably do want some new narratives. So I think a lot of what we're feeling with the dragons might kind of come down to some of that. Does it mean that I don't still absolutely love parts of this? I absolutely love this expansion, but there are other areas where I think, again, the story could have been told more robustly, and I would have loved to see them have that opportunity. Soo-Won's definitely one of those. The final map is so fun, and I adore the meta, and I think there are beautiful spots on it. But it does also feel like, again, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. There could have been like 5 to 10 more story beats that happened to really unfold it to us between Echovald and then into Jade C. Jade C feels like it's maybe one of the most underdeveloped because its focus is all on that final action, which it serves well. But yeah, it's, again, we could have used more for sure.
I mean, kind of, you were saying how they wanted to move on and not tell a dragon-centric story, but I think that helter-skelter rush towards being finished with the dragons is part of what undermined the non-dragon stories they had to tell.
Yeah, and the dragons.
You can let the epic dragon be the backdrop to this country that is struggling to redefine themselves and shake off paranoia and fear of change, instead of making that be, okay, let's be done with your little troubles, let's go kill a dragon.
Yes.
Because they're not little troubles and they didn't have to be.
Hi.
Hey, Jeb, welcome back. How's the couch?
Oh, it was only 2 boxes. They were taller than me, and I'm 6'2", and they were like, one was almost 7 foot. So I had to get it through the door, and they weighed like 35 kilograms each. So there's me on my own, like an absolute idiot, like on the street, just like pulling these boxes along the floor, hoping that they're not broken from me doing this. And I'm just like, oh, I've got to get this in my apartment. I should probably close the spices me just like pushing things aside. Now there's just 2 7-foot boxes in my living room, and I have to put my sofa together after this. So that's definitely happening tonight. There's no way I could just leave that on the side.
See if there's like anybody with kids in your complex or nearby. When we got our couch, we gave them the boxes from the couch, and they made it last like 3 months, and had so much stinking fun with that box.
Yeah, these boxes are the big in most people's apartments, I feel like. It's just like, okay. So how was the conversation? Where did we get to? You were talking about the events and just hanging out and doing the things?
Nope.
You didn't?
No, we didn't talk about that.
Oh, sorry. 2 seconds. I'll be right back again.
Oh, okay. Let's really quick. Let's talk about the events.
I'm back again.
Oh,
okay.
too fast.
Well, it doesn't matter if whatever you talked about, I'm sure it was great. What did you talk about? Just give me a little bit of a...
We were talking for next post the question that we even were talking about last week a little bit. Did we feel as though we had enough time with Soo-Won before reaching this final map?
Okay.
So we were discussing that, and Outtro was mentioning as well that even characters like the Salt Spray Dragons felt like they weren't fully manifested in regards to like the draconic storylines and themes. So we were kind of talking about that and how they balanced the narrative overall up to this culminating point where you face Soo-Won.
Okay. Cool. I will play this. I will put good job. I will play this.
You're very good at
video
this.
Then. Oh wow, sorry. You're really good at like recounting the story. I wonder if it's something you've done before, or like recounting events that have happened recently.
It's almost as if you have some experience there.
Yeah, something
Maybe.
odd. I don't know. Experience. Last map, great map, love it, amazing. Yes, personally, events were cool, everything. The fact that did you talk about the fact that you do have to do, like, is you doing the meta event before you do the story? Like, is that something that you talked about and what that was like? Okay, let's talk about that. Whew. Okay,
I'd completely forgotten about that, actually.
Yes, because I don't know if it actually mattered to me in the end, but we'll find out if it mattered to you. So when we're in the last map, there's a story pop up. I am sweating buckets. Sorry. There's a part which comes up where basically top right corner, I think it comes up in the top right corner where the green star is and all that kind of stuff. And it says it in the actual log, I can't remember, but basically says, do the meta event before you go and do like the end bit. It's not like you have to, but like it
there's
feels
an
like
achievement.
there's an achievement, but also like there's a thing where it kind of explains, this is something which is repeating a little bit, and you have to go back and kill her because you all tried, but you need to do something more, whatever. Did you all do this, or did you just go straight on with the story?
I tried to do it. I wanted to.
Yeah.
I had a lot of even people tell me like, oh, it really is great to do it beforehand. And I agree. I actually think that if I had been able to do it beforehand and I'd been able to talk to Soo-Won down in the cradle and I'd been able to, I would have found it to be very impactful in the story narrative beats. Unfortunately, and I'm not complaining because I actually like the difficulty of this meta, but unfortunately, I did the meta six times, something like that. Failed every one, and finally was like, I have to finish recording my playthrough. I was like, I can't keep trying.
Yeah, no, it's the same. I don't think many people did it before. I think even failing it was okay. Like I think that was almost like inferred as well. Like it didn't matter which one. Like you tried it and then you saw them come back, and there was an essence of they're coming back, but they're coming back for your story playthrough or something.
I wish that you could get that achievement for just attempting. Then, if that were the intention,
I think you did you know?
But you had to defeat her. You had to win that final meta to get the achievement.
I wonder if I went,
and so
it
felt like it was. It felt like it was locking you out.
I wonder if I did do it then before. I can't remember. I have to go back and look at mine. But okay, yeah. Oh, that kind of does suck. I mean, yeah, like because it is behind a really difficult encounter then, locking story, which is essentially something which they shouldn't be doing. Honestly, like I mean, we shouldn't be locking story. We've learned that, haven't we, from raids? I thought that was something that was kind of being learned. But I guess, maybe when you don't know how difficult this is going to be until it's really in the hands of a lot of people who can get together and play this as like a squad. Because I know that obviously they have tests, they do all their tests, the alpha and whatnot as well, but they're not going to be, it's not live, they've not got all the people in there, the different experiences, the different, so yeah, I guess this was definitely a little bit maybe overtuned for like such a public setting. I do like the difficulty still that it does. I think maybe now, I'm not sure if it's too easy. I don't know.
I think it's still satisfyingly difficult. Because the biggest change that they did, and the biggest change that they desperately did need to make, was the frequency of a particular attack. That if it chained more than 3 times, which it did infuriatingly, you would be running back and forth helplessly across the platform with unable to do any damage while the timer is ticking down. And so that was really what lost out of the many times that I lost that meta. That did 9 out of 10 of the attempts were failed because of that stupid RNG on that attack.
With the tail, that's
and because
right.
when the tail goes up,
when
the tail goes up, you have to run back to burn it. And I think she even doesn't she have like reduced damage or something?
She takes reduced damage while the tail is up, and then the tail would pop up, and then she would lunge, and you'd have the tail and the lunge taking away from your potential, from your ability to do anything at all.
Okay, so all of the story beat stuff aside, everything else aside, everything with that, I actually love this meta, and I think it's awesome. Like, all of the different little beats of it, the way they combine the different elder dragons. I even like the different lanes. Even if we talked about how maybe like the story could have more robustly supported this coming together of allies, I love that you have the different like leaders of those factions and the dialogue as they all start to encounter each other. Some of them for like one of the first real times, as they're trying to just come together for this battle. I think even the areas that you go for those different groups are fantastic. The shrine that has the fox guardian and like tying in even the cosmetic of like the shrine guardians and everything that we've had. I would have loved to get some more story beats there or something, because I find that little area so fascinating, and the guardian who's watching over it, who helps you turn it away, the hatchery. I mean, all of the areas are gorgeous, and for all that people complained a ton about the color of the jade and the jade and the jade and all the stuff and the sea looks dumb.
Oh god.
I actually think that the zone is beautiful. And I love the jade and going underneath the map and that little secret, all of that stuff is so beautiful. So on its own, I really enjoy it, and the music and the final fight feels so epic. Like, when we look back on how disappointed I think a lot of people were with some of the Path of Fire metas, and then you think back to stuff like Dragon Stand, still one of my favorites ever in the game, this brought back a sense of that to me, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like, the different phases and the music and the culmination on top of this hugely important landmark in the franchise, and the Harvest Temple and Soo-Won and the voice actors, all of it was just so great. Those bugs were unfortunate and did cause a lot of problems. But again, this kind of large scale open world content is something that like no other MMO I know of does. And I thought they really pulled out all the stops for this meta. So whatever I thought about any of the other narrative beats, I actually loved the story that this meta told, and how it combined so much of our journey throughout the game and our previous fights and our companionship with Aurene into this huge, massive thing, which was so cool.
It's very dramatic. The music is everything about it. The music is so dramatic that it brings up copyright issues on Twitch. It is very dramatic. It's all like, you hear the kind of wails of the voice, and the sound of like everything going on, and then you've got like, Ritlock, and you've got other people from everyone from your journey so far, like harping into like what's going on, like we thought we'd come and help, and then you're going to kill different. It is just hectic, and then you go to the single player instance and you're like, well, okay. I mean, this is, because I was just expecting like just a replay and then you just win, but like it just wasn't. It was, we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, I wonder about people in chat, like what you think about the event now, how you feel about that. I mean, it brings back the Heart of Thorns way of doing the expansion, right? Because Path of Fire was totally different. It was very flat, literally. Like it was very flat. And you kind of get to those end maps and it feels like, you know, there's a continuation coming. Doesn't really feel like a culmination, like an end to it. Whereas like now you've got, I can't remember what the end map is called in Path of Fire. But you know, you've got Dragon's End, you know, it's just these places which just culminate in, here's a story, this is the expansion, and this is kind of the end of that thing. And then you've got this massive event where you all take part in this meta. And it wasn't really like that in Path of Fire. There wasn't really many meta events. There wasn't really these big massive fights. It was very much a single story where you could play through that apart from the rest of the game, and it almost would make just as much sense if you played it on its own, which is quite cool. And I kind of did like that for Path of Fire, but also not a massive fan of the very flat, literal nature of Path of Fire. So I was kind of glad to see it go back to Heart of Thorns, but also this map was a culmination of both of those expansions for me. It had verticality, like literally, but it was on a flat plane. So it was like you would go down into an open area, but then you would have to come back up again utilizing mounts, and then you had to go to get POIs and stuff. You had to go literally to another level. It wasn't that difficult. Like you could just navigate down there, and then you could fish and stuff, and it was a bit more chill down there. So it was like, I don't know, it was a good, it's definitely a last map. It's not somewhere where you kind of wander around for ages and you kind of investigate, although I think getting materials and stuff makes it that way. But I do like the way they kind of made this map, as the intention behind it was very, very clear, and this part of the story is very, very, very good and very well done if you just judge it on its own separate kind of end boss battle time, you know, that kind of classic thing when you're going through the level and you're defeating this boss. It just reminded me of these scrolling beat 'em ups and stuff that I used to play as a kid, and like you'd just be seeing this boss all the way through the map at different points in time, and I don't know, it's a weird comparison, but there's just that feel for me. Okay, we're gonna go through. So interesting enough on the screen, the reason I've paused it now, and if you can't see the video, is because Kroof actually got that achievement, and like I did as well, and didn't kill the boss. So I don't know if there's a bug. I don't think you had to kill them though. I think it was something like just do it or experience it, or maybe it was a different tube. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. I think Gnome's put it in the chat. But I think it was it's a subdue Soo-Won or something, and I'm like, what does subdue mean in this? Does it mean defeat and she comes back, or does it mean you hang out, she's knackered for a bit and she fucks off for a while? Like, what's that mean? Yeah, that's it. That's the line there.
Yeah, succeed in subduing Soo-Won in Dragon's End.
Yeah, I guess succeed would make it mean.
It makes it clearer.
I guess so. Okay. Oh, yeah, there you go. Oh my god, the line that comes from you. This fight is taking too long, and I'm just too tired. We failed. Oh my god.
A very frustrating way to end. I think that might have added to my frustration ending so many times. Failing so many times is like, just all of a sudden, there's no voice lines saying I am wearing out, I'm exhausted, we're almost dead, I can't handle this. No, it's just all of a sudden, no, I'm tired, I'm gonna take a nap, guys. You're on your own. You failed.
Something. I think she says something earlier.
She
says something about like, you know, like, I don't know if I can keep going, like, I don't know if I'll be able to go, or like she says something, I think she says something like that throughout it.
It's mostly Soo-Won saying I can't hold back.
Yeah, but it's us player we're talking about specifically. We gave up. Yeah, we failed, like, as a player.
Well, I took it as Oreen's energies were like spent. Like the clashes lasted so long.
Oh, okay, maybe I
back.
Yeah, because it was Oreen calling out.
Oh, is it Oreen? Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
Oh, because the speech bubble was coming from us. Maybe it was that in our head specifically.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I got confused there.
But all of that to say, I actually love the meta. Cool. I wish they would let you linger a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It's the after map state.
I'd
Yeah.
love the chance to take some dang screenshots in that map without being attacked from every angle.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And we already talked about this. I won't harp on it too much, but I think one of the biggest missed opportunities for me on this map narratively, and it's not like it's actually missed. You can go experience it, and it is so worth the experience. But is the fact that you literally discover the cradle of all existence, which is in the Jade Sea, where Soo-Won created the world and then gave birth to the dragons. But if you don't know to look for it, and if you don't get on your mount, or somebody hasn't told you about this,
Just
and you have
beeline it.
yes, like you literally have to just like beeline your butt. Like if it's your first time, you have to beeline over there, figure out where she's at, and then if you haven't gotten the other collection with the other the salt spray dragon, then if you're like trying to do both of those, you're just in a rush to try and snag them. So for me, I think that like I loved the meta. I actually also love the story beats, and we'll get to those in a second. And I love the like party instance or solo instance version. And there's so many incredible things that happen here at the end. But I please like if you find the whole cradle of existence and the entire thing that gave birth to the dragons, that needs to be a major story beat in the final map where you go there and it's like the music plays. You're like, where am I? And it's like, this is where the world was born. And it's like, it needs to like, that is the beginning of dragons. You need to know
And that was the
from
cycle.
the end of
That was the
dragons.
circle as well. Like, you know, the cycle. That's like you're coming. That's literally another one. You know, we're coming to the end. That you're so, because you know what? In my head, I don't think it clicked in my head that is what that was until you said it. I'm serious. Like, I feel really stupid for thinking for that, but maybe that. But like, I just didn't pay attention. Like, I was listening to the story and I was like, because I was like, where do I go? What do I do? What's another thing I have to do? Like, what is going on? Where are we? Who is this? And then it just ended. And then I was like, shit. Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel kind of stupid for that, but like, it's the truth. It's just the truth.
Don't feel stupid because you literally wouldn't know unless you had like gone down there. And even so, I think the line she says or something about like, oh yeah, this is like
very offhand.
Yeah, she's like, I made the universe here or whatever. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, and I had all my babies were here too, and this is where they all grew up as like, you know, little ones.
We all cuddled here.
Yes, like this is what they were all like, and this is what their natures were like before they got so corrupted and skewed. And in that, she shares her hopes for the future of Aureen in this gorgeous, like, subtle way of the hopes she once carried for her own children, who are now all dead, which is so brutal. Like, to hear a mother's story of, like, the first beautiful moment she shared with her children, and then what they became and what she became, and how, you know, she realized that this cycle that was born of hope, and it was born of her love of the world and what she herself felt was needed for it, that things went awry and went wrong, and that she had no control over that. And then to have this future where through the iteration, through the stumbling, through the failures, through the devastation, through the all of this stuff, to have a chance at a better world, that while, you know, there may have been these horrible things, that from it came something beautiful. And Aureen herself, who has faced death, but who managed to come through it by uniting with others, by sharing this world, by, you know, disseminating this power. Like, it's beautiful. And it's so, so incredibly moving. And if nothing else, like that final scene with Aureen and Soo-Won, where, you know, she does give up her life, and, you know, it should have taken place in the cradle of the world. Are you kidding?
Rick is just like, oh, so like, like sensitive, like really care, and then all of a sudden, oh.
Can you imagine the power of that scene? It's an Easter egg that you can unlock, and it's an incredible one, but it shouldn't be an Easter egg.
No, it shouldn't.
Soo-Won should have laid down her burden in the place where she gave birth to the world. She should have said, the world was once mine, but now it is yours. Again, I talked about earlier the incredible themes in this expansion about familial, like, gosh, even Rama, right? Rama is a better future after the terrible things that even his father figure had. Yao looks up to these other figures and has now charted their own course. Aureen, who lived under the burden of her mother's legacy, the loss of her brother, we talked about this earlier, the almost, if we want to use it as a greater metaphor, the abuse cycles or things like that
absolutely.
of the other elder dragons.
Sure.
Like, again, if it's this idea of a cycle of we are all constantly trying to do our best in certain ways, and some of us fall prey to these terrible things, and some of us choose to do terrible things, but we all pick ourselves up and we continue to move forward. A new cycle can be reborn. We can break free of the old. That is where that moment should have happened. And like, we should have had the whole scene where she's telling us those terrible, sad things.
Should have been a cutscene, shouldn't it? Really, at the end, honestly.
Yeah.
What do you think, Harold? I think that you're warming up to tell us your feelings about this.
No, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think that I agree with you that the battle, the build up, the lanes, they're fun, they're engaging. The small stories that you get along them are great. Would I have liked more lead up to get me into the map? Yes. But we don't live in a perfect world. You get a great story, you get this incredible encounter, which is challenging, and I remember the drama on Twitter. That was quite hilarious.
Which one?
I was going to say, which one? Is this balance or is this the dragon?
Yeah. But I have to agree. I think at the last hurdle for the end of Dragons, they dropped the ball with their storytelling. They just dropped the ball. And I think that it does an injustice to all the hard work and the fantastic setup and the great spectacle that they were trying to do. And then you've got 50% of the players leaving the map before they've actually got the story that we came to Cantha to get. We came to Cantha because we wanted to learn about where the Elder Dragons came from, why the cycle started, and was it possible to subvert it and still survive? And most players won't know the answer to any of those questions because it's hidden in a little area at the side of the map that's blocked off 90% of the time. And if you don't have someone leading you there by the nose, you're buggered. So
the one thing I would change there, just to lead more players along, because there are a lot of players who, for some unknown reason, are not in a game for a story, and they just want to ignore it all. But for everyone who does and just doesn't know it's there, just have Aureen come to the edge of the platform, check in with us, kind of touch base. You guys okay? I'm going to go follow her. Follow me.
She does have a line where she
does,
says,
but you never see her. She just like takes off.
Yes, it's like, it's very, and there's like a little trail of, I think, like orbs you can follow. But again, when you've just finished this meta and you're trying to loot all the chests and you're trying to do you're on another
you've got
plane.
less than 5 minutes before they kick you out of the map.
Yes, it's
weird.
It's rough. It's rough.
Dragon Stand, you've got like ages. If there was anything
20 minutes,
to find,
half an hour.
you can go and get all the things and
Why isn't this huge crucial story moment part of the instanced personal story that we have? Why isn't it there? I don't understand. They could have taken all the time in the world to do it right there.
Yes, I agree. And it's beautiful. That area is just so gorgeous. Like the hush in that small little spot, the effects.
Mother's Lament.
Kind of like Mother's
Lament. The name of the place is just so good too.
It's like you go down to it feels like a cradle. It feels beautiful in that sense.
Like a den, a warm place.
Yes. And like, again, we get this beautiful parallel. One of the most striking images to me of the game is actually that the artwork. I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. The artwork from, I think, season 4. Is it season 4? Where Aureen, as like a young juvenile dragon, is cuddled up against Glint's corpse.
Mm-hmm.
And like that piece of art, and then the actual story instance where you like see her in touch with her mother for the first time physically, because she hadn't even hatched. She was just an egg when her mother perished. Like to touch her mother for the first time, to feel a mother's touch and have it be her mother's dead body is so brutal. It's so sad. I can't help but giggle because it's like, oh my God, that's so messed up and sad. And like, again, to be down here in this place where another mother lamented because her children, again, are now all dead. It's these incredible circular storytelling beats that are so wonderfully crafted. I have to commend the team. It is beautiful. It is impactful. And here they are, her legacy, her lineage, and, Irene finally meeting a figure like this for the first time. Yes, it should have been in a story beat. We should have seen it. It's so incredibly gorgeous in that sense that I have no idea why they didn't put it in the actual cinematic story beats. It's just phenomenal, and it's worth experiencing if you haven't been down there yet. And there's multiple lines of dialogue, so each time you complete it, go down because she'll tell you about one of the different babies and like what they were like and what their nature was like and things like that.
It's all on the wiki, by the way. You can go and
There's probably, you can probably look it up on YouTube.
The voice
if you're
acting
really...
is.
The thing is that I've listened to it a few times because I've done the event a few times, but no matter how many times I listen to it, I'm still not entirely sure how the world formed, how she gave birth to these entities if she was imperfect and just of one element. And it almost sounds like a the Greek myth of everything spawning from chaos.
Or from nothingness, which is the void. That's why, because it was the void was first, right? Mm-hmm. And then everything spawned from nothingness, which is like the void, I guess.
And so that's so vague. So what does that mean?
How did that happen?
Yeah. And she talks a bit about the fact that like because she was wielding, or she had so much power that the void, kind of like how we see that it like overruns, right? Like overflows. So she separated it out into these different, distinct kind of elements to her children. But again, we don't even 100% totally know why they all went rampant, when that started to happen, or, I mean, like you said, I think there is a fine line. I think with a sense of something like this, a world origin myth, you don't have to go midi-chlorian on it, like you don't have to be like every detail, but I do agree that it feels very vague, and it's just these little tiny breadcrumbs were kind of tossed.
I can ask you a question.
Creation event, right? It's weird.
Sorry.
Yeah. I go for it.
Can I ask you a question? So you're a Final Fantasy player. You know the story of the creation of the planet now. You understand all of it because you played Shadowbringers.
Spoilers, no.
Have you played it all? Have you played all the story?
Me, yes, but I don't know about.
I have not. I'm going through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna. No spoilers. Do you feel, knowing all the things that you know,
do you feel well informed
about the world? Or worse, do you feel like the mystery or the lack of mystery has spoiled the story? Because I don't.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a phenomenal addition to the story. It was a huge twist that came about in Shadowbringers that blew everybody's minds and is, really incredible. I do think that, however, within that, there is still a massive amount of mystery. Like, there's still a lot of things we don't know, although they continue to add in with like various supplemental lore stories. We just had a new one come out today. They continue to add in with new content, like the new 8-man and 24-mans, right? Because there are so many mysteries. And even that time period is still very enigmatic and mysterious. We don't know a lot of the greater scope of the world or, other things within it. Or how it even came to be in its like own evolution as a society. And, but I don't feel like it undermines it. So in that regard, yes. I do think that 14, in other regards, has plot holes and not in the same way, but they also are just as guilty sometimes of retroactive storytelling, where it's like we had this thing that we didn't really expand on, and now here we'll get something that totally revolutionizes, and that's kind of part of the nature of MMO storytelling.
It is.
It's sort of how it kind of works. But I think that overall, 14 has a tendency to more perhaps narrow in and hone in on cinematic story beats as if they are structuring what would be, because they've said this from the beginning, this is how they model it, a single player JRPG.
Yeah.
And so with that, there is a much more specific throughput of that kind of drive. Sometimes they even have too many cutscenes and too many diversions, and the maps are not always known for their best amplification of storytelling.
True.
Whereas Guild Wars 2, I think, almost has the complete opposite thing, where it comes from like a very action-oriented, immersive experience. And then sometimes I think we find ourselves wanting even more in the cinematic throughput experience, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I just don't think that them giving us more information and telling us more story and giving us and letting us see a little bit of how far the rabbit hole goes down, I don't think it ever spoilt it. And I feel like Guild Wars 2, that they're fond of their secrets, the story team, and I think there's a little too much.
They
I
need
think
a
there's a
lore
fine
master.
line.
They need a lore master like Elder Scrolls Online. I love that they have like a lore master where they literally like, that is a job. That is a job for someone at ZeniMax. Like, they have a person who is a lore master, and they will give you loads of random lore, like random on their Twitter or social channels, and there'll be like a person who like openly talks about the lore quite often. And I know that people do arena there and everything else, but like, it's just, I mean, it's Elder Scrolls. I mean, I guess we know a lot more about Elder Scrolls than anything else, probably. But like, I think Final Fantasy 14 is like so different to Guild Wars 2. Like, it's so different to Guild Wars 2. But like, in the same way, I almost feel like a lot of people who play Final Fantasy 14, that's almost their main game. And then Guild Wars 2 is like the casual kind of like, it's still a main game, but it's a bit more chill. It's like, because Final Fantasy 14 is just like you say, it's like got that really single player aspect to it where you feel very much on your own in the game. And like, there's a lot of it. And I think that's one reason I can't connect to Final Fantasy 14 a lot. And it's not because of the game. It's because I just really like to see other people running around in a world with me all the time. I mean, all the time. It's weird. I don't know why. Like, I find it very difficult to engage in single player story games unless they're really engaging and there's a lot going on. It's just just the way I am, I guess. I don't know. But
I just think that I don't want them to change how they deliver the game. I just think that they would have a better narrative experience for those who care about it if they had the singular focus and the bravery to give us too much information sometimes. It's okay to give us more story than we need rather than less. I think they've definitely always erred on the side of caution, and they're fond of their mysteries, and some of their mysteries are great, but when you have an expansion that says End of Dragons and you're putting an entire 10 years story to bed, I would like some closure and I would like a little bit more information, personally, for me.
No, I agree.
Because I love the story.
Absolutely. I think this is the point where that should absolutely. I agree with what you're all saying. Absolutely. I just think it should have been a cutscene, just a long cutscene, just like because they've shown us that, especially in the trailers and stuff, how they can create video. I know they have someone else creating that scene for them for the trailers and stuff. But like, have them create something in the game. Yeah, like, I mean, it does feel like that was a big missing part of it. I want to kind of go back before we get to that point, which is kind of, well, it's not, because we're talking about doing the event and then doing the single player story, because I want to get to that, because I realize the time is still ticking on and time does exist in our planet, unfortunately. But yeah, I totally agree. I think you're right. I think most people would probably agree. I think people who are listening for this for the first time and didn't realize that even exists will probably agree, which is probably a lot of people. And yeah, like, I makes me want to go and look at a YouTube video right now, actually, honestly, and just go back and take it in from someone else's perspective so I don't miss out on it. Because I know I'll probably be like, oh, there's something moving over there, and I'll just be like, run off after it. But yeah,
Also,
absolutely.
ArenaNet, if you're listening, I will take the job of Lore Master. Give it to me. I'll do it. I'll be your girl. I'll be the Crichton Herald for real. Anytime.
That's why you planned the name, you see. You planned
Yeah.
it.
We could put together a whole lore master team. You know what? We're here. We're ready. We already have enough documents outlined. We can just make it a big one, you know?
You know, we can go on at length about this enthusiastically.
Do it.
I am
Employ
actually
them,
glad
not me.
that yeah,
I
am
won't
The
be
ladies of law. The ladies of law.
there. Yes, I will support you all in that venture. I will just be there in the background, like let them do it. Yes, I agree. Like and when you're all talking about it, you made me really think about that. Like this is the creation of the world. Like, you know, this is a big thing, and it really is important because it's not just the culmination of Guild Wars 2. It's a combination of everything. It's like everything. It's the first game. It's the lore. It's like everything they've ever produced about the game. It's like, oh, this is where it began. It's like talking about the Big Bang, but not talking about the Big Bang. Like just leaving it. Like, yeah, there was this thing that happened. You know, the Big Bang. We think it was science or something, and it happened, and there was an explosion. But we continue to talk about it and look at it and like think about it and you know, it didn't feel like that's the thing, and maybe even can continue to be a theme throughout like Living Story as we continue. I actually hope it will be specifically.
I feel like I appreciate what they were doing in Mother's Lament, and I like that they kept it there, because what it did is it brought it to a very personal level. It took this big world-ending cataclysmic event and brought it down to a mother talking about her favorite memories of her children, and kept it very simple. And I think that the whole thing could have been solved by simply giving us more time, like we were saying earlier, more time to get to know Soo-Won, to get to ask her questions in a more organic and less, oh my gosh, you're dying, tell me about everything.
I think I like
We're
the
about to
void.
lose this thread. We're about to lose this opportunity. Tell me everything.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
it would have let it stay that nice, quiet, mournful moment.
I wonder if they can go back and do that in a similar way they've told other stories and just have separate things, like, you know, little living story, like, you know, going back through time again and reliving stuff. I'd like to.
Yeah, maybe Aureen has like access to, like we have with the
Memories and stuff.
scrying pool, where she'll be able to find something.
Yes, I would
like that
love
kind
to
of
see
thing.
that. Do not get me wrong, because I do think we could use it and need it. But
Yeah.
also, I think if you are structuring an expansion, you do have to do your storytelling thinking forward.
Of
so,
course.
like,
Yeah.
it's like it's both. You need to deliver enough to support what's happening and not just retroactively.
Yeah,
But
sure.
all of this is to say because sorry,
I was going to say, we still have Kunavang.
we do. Yes.
Kunavang is still there, and she has been her dragon champion for a significant period, a couple of 100 years, right? So they could give us all this story through our adventures with Kunavang going forward.
Yes, and I
Yes.
hope they
I
do,
mean-
because that'll be important for Aureen.
You can reasonably, with the way Soo-Won spoke, she knew it was eventually going to come to this. She had hoped it wouldn't, but she knew it would. And so there's all sorts of preparations that she could have laid in place to tell us, you know, how was the world formed? How does that affect how we should interact with it? What do the magics actually look like when they're in balance and in one place? You know, some important longevity to existence information.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
especially as Aureen considers her own future. And she herself even says that she doesn't know if she'll ever fall to the void. They are just kind of assuming
They've
she
left that
won't.
hanging.
because of her-
Yeah.
Yes, like,
They've left that
which,
hanging.
I mean, I think is also interesting because it means that there's still more to discover. But for all of that, because I know, Jeb, you were trying to bring it back to the actual like story instance that we do, I did want to talk about the fact that even with all these ideas that we have, with additional things that I think could have made particularly the Soo-Won specific narrative more profound, I do love that story instance. I do love the moment where you get to finally really, I mean, we have been a dragon champion. You know what I mean? We have done it. We have like done some special abilities. we've come into our own and stuff. But then you see like Icebird Saga, where you see Bram going full molten magma mode.
Yeah.
You see like all these things, this idea of what it means to be like bonded to a dragon and be able to, as a mortal, wield some fraction of their powers. And I was just like, so excited. Oh my gosh, when you like pull out the Aurene legendary, like there's our legendaries, there is like the manifestation of our power. It made me even more excited for the weapons, the special effects, like everything that you're doing. And then the actual like fight is so good. It's so good. It was in many ways like the thing that still like, for all that there is a big discussion to be had about the balancing of the story, I personally did not leave End of Dragons feeling like, that last bit was really a fart. Like, I felt really like I was excited. Even if there were many areas that I wanted to be fleshed out, I still adore this expansion. But a big part of it, I think, was I do think they succeeded in manifesting our moment as like, ourselves as a dragon champion. Yeah, and I felt really cool in those moments, and I felt really awesome facing down all those manifestations of the dragons again. Yeah. And it was so fun to fight Zaitan again in a more exciting way.
Well, I was gonna do a little thing here because I thought it would be quite cool because it was so important, I think, and it means that we can go kind of in a maybe some linear kind of order, and just kind of talk about the instances we go through it. I would love to do a playthrough where we all play through it together, honestly, one day. Not now, because that would be long-winded. Actually, no, it probably wouldn't, because it would be fun. But basically, where I've paused it on the video, which I've left it for a little bit because I'm hoping it catches up and you're able to see maybe if you have got another monitor. I'm not sure if you haven't, sorry. You've got the extractor. Soo-Won is kind of in control still and is like sitting there. And it's just this big thing. And it's just like the story part says drain Soo-Won. And it's like, you've got this big, massive extractor thing and you're activating it. Like, you are doing all the things. And she says, what does she say? There's some really, like, big quotes here. There was one here when she says, the cycle ends. We are truly awake. We are time. We are space. And there was, like, so many massive quotes here in this end instance. And I was like, man. And it is just like when you do it, I like, this was a pretty powerful moment because you're literally turning on, like, June is right there. Like, June is right there, like, helping you turn on this machine, like, and is all the tech and the work that she's made and from Soo-Won, and now she's turning on her to, like, effectively kill her. And then it's just like, Jesus, man, like, what this meant to these people in this story would have just been like, I don't know. It was just a pretty heavy scene, honestly. And yeah, I just kind of, what was it like for all of you? Like when you had this moment and then realized that kind of Soo-Won's gone, but then the voids, that's what's happened. The void's coming back and then you kind of start getting attacked, right? It's all a pretty, it's a good start to this instance because it was probably one of the longer instances of the entire story, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it didn't feel that long in retrospect, but
it's a fairly hectic runaround, isn't it? It's fairly hectic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. Then there's the cutscene and the machine. I think the machine breaks or something. I can't remember exactly. One of you with a brain that can remember things can probably help here. But like the void come back, and I think you start attacking all of these creatures. Right, that's right. This is what happens. And as these creatures come in, you get overwhelmed. And as that happens, like everyone's there. Like there's loads of people from your past there. And it just looks dire. Like I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I'm like, wow. Ultimately you're going to win the day. But I think this is the first time where I felt truly like, we might not do this. And there's people like the cutscene with like Ritlock and Cretia and like other people in Tyrion. You can see the void like draining all the magic back out from the whole of Tyrion. It's just like, whoa, this is like a big thing. This is a big deal now. Like we're going to be coming across this big, massive force and everything is just coming together and we're kind of fucked. Do you know what I mean?
do remember thinking like, okay, they're going pretty big scale now. I know we've had big scale threats before, but
Yeah.
how are we going to resolve this? I remember this.
Exactly. Like, and you're this is across the entire world. You've got like Path of Fire characters in there. You've got like living world, living story, and everyone's like, you're just like, yeah, this is what's going to happen now. And I'm wondering, like, what was that like to see that cutscene as well? Because I really loved that cutscene in itself. Just seeing like all the magic and all the different lands that we've kind of been across and the people that we've interacted with, and maybe why they weren't even there, because there were some people that weren't there. I don't know. I don't really know what to say. I don't know if I've got a question, honestly. I think I'm just explaining the thing, like what was happening and what I was thinking about it, because it does, you feel kind of hopeless, and I don't feel like I ever felt like that in the game before as a character.
The closest I can think is when you die in Path
Other than
of Fire.
death, yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Because there's the moments before that where you see Aurene get imprisoned and everything else. And then you realize like, oh my gosh, they really did that. Oh my gosh, they really killed me. And I think that moment will always be like a huge one for me in this game. It's so incredible.
That's true, actually, yeah.
True.
Yeah, I think in that one.
Oh god.
Oh, just in the moment where they kill you in Path of Fire, it was so sudden and so visceral, and there was no build up to that. Really, you had the fight where you're like, something's wrong. This fight is not going how I expected, but it was so sudden that I never had this moment of, oh my gosh, how am I going to save the world now? I wasn't even thinking that far ahead.
Right.
Yeah, and this gives you that great sense of, like what we're fighting for. And I think it also opens up the world, because so much of this has been a direct threat to Cantha. And this is even something that I felt recently with like 14, right? Because they are, trying to add these new layers and nuances and twists. And we get a new expansion that, again, is retroactively filling in a lot of story. There were some decisions that were made in that narrative that at the last hour introduced, shall we say, some revolutionary and massively important things that had kind of come out of nowhere, in a sense, that then like gave a totally different context for everything else. And we're like, this had been here the whole time. And some people in the community really responded poorly to that, which is fair. I, again, think it's just part of the nature of storytelling in MMOs. So with this, like, particular facet in Guild Wars 2 of the Void, I think it was important to show the Void as something that is a threat throughout all of Tyria and not just Cantha.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unfortunate, because I think that even if they like retroactively went back and like added something in with the Elder Dragon visuals where there's like a hint of the Void, but we don't actually, this is another big question that we don't actually really have 100% answered by End of Dragons, unless you all picked up on something that I didn't. I don't believe the other dragons were consumed by the Void. They just were consumed by their own element of magic, right?
It seemed to me,
That's what I got from it. But that's also kind of interesting then, because then like the force of the Void as this big malevolent thing that, Soo-Won has battled against for so long, it does have a sense of being that thing that just kind of pops up out of nowhere, right? I think it's still cool. I like the idea and the mythology of like this chaos versus this order kind of force, because yes, our own universe has that, which I think is really fascinating. But I think it was important that they showed the Void touching all of Tyria and affecting everything. So the cutscene here does that effectively. And I liked the context of how this wasn't just a threat to Cantha, this was a threat to everything. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
In the moment, I remember being very, very hyped, and it was very, very swept up in the kind of the drama of it. But I remember getting to the end of the expansion and feeling quite elated by everything that happened. But then the rational brain kicks in, and you're like, was that a bit Deus Ex Machina? Did we just pull the Void out of some orifice or another to kind of to fill a story hole? And will we see it again? Is it going to be a recurring theme? Are we going to give it more substance than a kind of shade of madness in the elder creator deity that we seem to have stumbled across. I don't know.
We'll find out, hopefully.
Well, fingers crossed.
I think it's weird though, isn't it? If you think about our world and the universe, and you think about the never-endingness and how the universe is always being created, and like we'll never find out because we'll never see that far, because like it's just not doable. Maybe in like a million years when we're like, you know, we've got 7 legs and 5 hands and 17 million arms. I don't know, but like, do you know what I mean? Like,
becomes crabs.
Everything is crabs. Yeah, like and okay, and
it's an evolutionary. There's the shape of the crab is a recurring evolutionary form.
Right. Okay.
It's a convergent thing. Sorry.
I like it. No, that's good. But do you know what I mean? Like in terms of space, like, you know, and I think it's okay to not know everything, but I think we need to know a little bit more than we do know currently, because it is a little bit, because it's not the universe, is it? It's the world, and it's like, yeah.
I think it's all right to have competing arguments. So you could, you know, like the Coda have one idea of the evolution of the Norn, and the Norn have another, and we get to experience and explore those stories for ourselves, and then we can make a decision what we want to think, or we can disregard. What we have here is we were teased in season 2. Was it season 2 with the machine? It was, wasn't it?
Omad's
machine.
When we're floating in the alchemy and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Right, so we have a theory of everything with the alchemy.
Yeah.
We experience a layer of it. We see the kind of structure, the fundamental building blocks of the reality that we're in, these primal essences. And now we have a competing narrative. Now we have a competing prime mover narrative of this creator dragon, who has split herself into fragments and to spin up reality, and somehow reality formed around her, or the planet formed around her, or she allowed it to. We don't know, and I think it's important that they allow the players to explore that, and they could do that quite easily through like the College of Synergetics, or through the Priory even. You know?
I'm going to pull us a little bit back, as I realised that I probably pulled us into that place where we decided to talk about stuff outside of this specific part, because I realised that if we start talking about the creation of Tyria, that could be an entire season of Guild Wars 2
kind of pull it back in the way they chose to tell the story in the end, and to keep it vague and give us so little time with Soo-Won is maybe to let us have that. The unreliable narrators, the what if this is how it was, and the not overwrite and override every other creature's creation story is they kept it to that, and we do get that very brief time with her in the story.
There is a to go back to the kind of instance that we're in. There was a funny quote I had from Kroof, because this was a constant for me. I wrote quotes down from Kroof throughout, and this was a funny one. Let me just try and find it. Oh yeah, here we go. Kroof said, "Kunavang died. It's not the time for you to be GGing early, Kunavang." That's what Kroof was saying. And this is where we kind of are, like, everyone is dying. It's not just like Kroof literally running out of abilities, because there's just nothing else you can do. There's just so much, and you're like, I'm sorry, don't think I can carry on. Like Ola said as well earlier, you know, there was this instant death in POF, whereas in here, it's like, this feels like you're struggling. You're just fighting for a while, and then it's all of a sudden you're just talking to Irene, and you're like, pulled out of this place, and it's not void, it's nothing, it's actually very calm. And I don't think the music, I can't remember what the music is like here, I should turn it up, but like,
I wonder if they were playing on the concept of the dream of making this like mentally divided space within the mists here. This is what it made me think of more than anything, is the moments that we, like when you make a Sylvari character and you start out in the dream, it has this kind of feel to it, where the edges of everything it's a real place, except then the edges are all kind of blurry and foggy in this way. I don't know.
for the
They
mind.
just have an ethereal capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a spiritual. Yeah, but this bit here, I'm wondering what look you had on your face, Rook. Honestly, I'm on this bar
Oh
here.
yeah, no, you'll be able to
because-
see. You'll be able to see when that video portion goes
You
up.
haven't got it out yet, have you? Have you?
No, it's still going up because I was also simultaneously releasing portions of Endwalker. So
okay.
it's been a while.
So much at once.
But so much at once. No, I lost it. I think you all can anticipate. I was yelling. I was so excited.
Yeah.
I was laughing. Like joy, pure joy.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I was very pumped about this. This was one of my favorite moments, I think, in all of Guild Wars 2. I just loved this whole thing. I loved this whole concept. I thought it was so good. It also was extra good because I had been rocking, as you've all seen in game, my Orion's champion look, my outfit. And I have to say, while Kroof's character, while they're very, very good, my outfit with the additional effects and everything else going on, I looked so radiant. It was unbelievable. I looked full on like Orion's champion on a level I had never fully achieved, and it was just so good. And
you've got the Orion legendaries of the weapons you're using as well, right? Like I didn't realize that was the same. I didn't, because I can't remember. I might get my playthrough up in a second and see what I had, but I was engineer, so I don't have weapon swap. Makes me feel sad. I didn't get as many legendaries. So this was you're right, it's fucking epic. It was so good. Aaron, Harold, I want you to talk about it, because if you don't, I will. And I need other people to talk about it. But how are you feeling about this? What were your thoughts when you got your legendary and you kind of powered up and you're ready to go and you start fighting all the different dragons, not dragons specifically, but the what are they?
They're
void,
like shades of their minions.
Yeah.
The void shades.
Echoes. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I never fell off the edge to see what happened there. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
I'm watching the stream, so I'm on quite a delay on what you're showing. Yeah. Did I think it's been a while?
What about all the Herald?
It was pretty
feel
epic.
free as well to.
Yeah.
I really liked the fact that they went back to the bosses so that we could do them again.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the fact, when you think of how far we've come from our first encounter with Saitan to these type of multi-stage battles, I was just so impressed that they had the balls to really throw us right into the shit, because it's a really difficult encounter. I actually walked my my mother-in-law through this, so a lot of this was me just coaching her, because she's a 1v1 player, so this was a bit wild for her. And I loved how challenging it was, and how much fun it was, and how they kind of tried to embody the spirit of each of the dragons with the encounter that you had. Yeah, there was a similarity with the mechanics with the glowy balls and everything, but you really felt that they were channeling the essence of the dragons, and you really I felt, I mean, I'm a fairly mediocre player, and I felt pushed to do this and drag my mother-in-law with me, but it was really satisfying, and it was really great to interact with our different companions and friends that we've made along the way in the different expansions on each of the platforms, and it felt like a building kind of crescendo to the final kind of encounter with her, and I think they did a really, really good job. This was it was a good marriage of gameplay and storytelling with beautiful visuals, with challenging gameplay that wasn't too challenging to make it, like you set your testicles on fire or something. It was really, really good.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Yes. You're quite welcome.
No,
I like how it made you simultaneously feel really like this is your last super powerful. This is your Super Saiyan moment where you have gone and just leveled up to a level you didn't know you could get to, and yet you're there because the enemies are that powerful. And if you didn't have Aureen's power in that moment, if you hadn't been artificially leveled up, there's no chance.
No, absolutely not. This is the thing. Because like, look at this screen live. Just like that in itself is just flipping epic. Like Primordus is like right there, nomming on the platform that you're on, and there's just this massive AOE, and it's just like the scale of it is ridiculous. Like that's the. I don't know if it's the same size as the head that we see in that battle we have between like the dragons. I think it's a bit smaller, but like because your like the platform is small as well, like the scale just feels really good and you feel like you're in danger. Like this thing is slamming his face down on it's just literally face palming and like trying to it's just epic. And it gives you like, I haven't done the strike mission for this, but it's definitely got like elements of it because I've watched people play through it. But then you're like, next dragon, and you're right, you know, there's Kanak and everyone else, but you're so huge. Like, Kanak's just this tiny little guy. It looks like an Asura-sized person, and he's just like, so little. It's funny though, because he's in his armor, he's not in his suit or anything. I was expecting him to be in his suit when he was hanging out, but he wasn't. I was disappointed in that. No, not really.
I mean, you don't go to battle in a three-piece white leather suit, white suede suit.
I don't know. I mean,
I wouldn't risk getting that scuffed.
That's true. That's true. Could get some void on it here and there.
I mean,
yeah,
void and a lot of other stuff, but
yes,
it just. I love those moments where you feel simultaneously super powerful and completely and utterly helpless. And they manage to like, you're frantic, you're gonna die if you don't have Aureen, literally upsizing you.
Yeah.
I kind of like that reference to how all the champion creatures are always an upscaled character model.
Yeah.
And you get a moment to be the upscaled character model.
You are a champion.
You become the boss. You become the champion. Yes, I love it.
This is Zaitan as well. It's like you're harking back to the old dragons where you're like, you know, I haven't seen this dragon for a long time. I forgot what it looked like. You know what I mean? It's just like, and then it's Logan and who else with it on foot? Isn't that Kate? Is that? Yeah, so you've got the older, that is them. I actually didn't think about that. Like they're there with you fighting Zaitan, like the old core Guild Wars 2 bunch, you know,
getting the band back together.
It's very relevant. Like it does suit like the cycle. You know, you come back and you defeat this again with these people who are very present during this time. It
almost felt like an acknowledgement that they realized that people were dissatisfied with, say, for example, the Icebrood Saga encounter, because yes, it was great. The battle was spectacular, but we wanted to battle the dragons. We wanted not the surrogates almost, and this is kind of a redress to that. It's a redress to the fair criticisms of the Zaitan fight. It's a redress to the fair criticisms of the internal battle that we had with Mordramoth. This is what it should have been, I think, and this is them giving us what we've been asking for such a long time, which is a strongly themed visceral encounter that requires a great deal of perseverance from the player,
where you can do massive damage and see numbers much bigger than you will ever like. There is a lot of satisfaction. Yeah, there is a lot of satisfaction here. This is the end.
This is a stroking the ego time, which is fine. You can stroke my ego. I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah, but then like you become this massive ball of energy, right? And then you kill Soo-Won. That's it. Like you come to the end of it and you assess the situation, as it says, and like there's this big cutscene and you come down in this big glowing kind of ball, like, you know, and all of the power seeps away from you, and it's just like you float down and your character just looks sick. Doesn't matter who you are. I do want to see Charles and what they look like. And yeah, that's kind of, that's not it, but you know, it's kind of the end, and it's like, there's a lot that continues after this, to be fair. There's still so much more. Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, that whole fight, and then you land back here, Like, what was it like to go through just as an end thought to that whole sequence, really? Because it's its own thing, that whole fight, like just everything going on. I was overwhelmed, I think, honestly. I was overwhelmed. I was just like, damn, there is so much stuff going on. And that's not a bad, being overwhelmed necessarily isn't always a bad thing, as I think normally we associate being overwhelmed with bad things often. Like, you can be overwhelmed with good. Like, you know, that's not necessarily
a kid in a sweetie shop
thing.
Type of thing, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's the kid.
absolutely.
It's all the shiny things.
Yeah, for sure. That's what it was like.
The long cool down after, where you go through this story instance and then you go back to Arborstone. You go. There's this long processing period, and I think that is really important to make it not a bad overwhelm from earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I already said it, but I loved that whole thing. I loved the whole instance.
Yeah.
I loved the turning the tides, ascending to your full-on form dragon champion. I thought all of it was fantastic. So yeah, I still really, really think that's one of my favorite instances, probably from a lot of Guild Wars too, but especially in End of Dragons, where there were several other story instances that I think were fantastically done. It felt to me like, when you look at like the early story instances in Guild Wars 2, they have a lot of flavor and flair. There's some really memorable, really fun ones, but there are also so many of them that you're like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you even want from me? You're like trying to figure out what you're supposed to do and what the exact beats are and how you make the thing happen. And especially if you're working on achievements or stuff like that, some of them could be confusing. And to see how much their storytelling has even grown in these kinds of instances. It was challenging, like you said, it was overwhelming in a sense because so much was happening. It was such a huge moment. There was this huge culmination. But at the same time, I was so thrilled. And I felt like, you know, my path ahead was clear. I had to figure out what the mechanics were, but I wasn't like floundering trying to figure out, like, am I supposed to use some special thing to do a thing to find this, to go down that path, or to go up to, you know, it was just like thrilling, fast-paced action with a huge cinematic high point. And I really, really, really loved that. So yeah, I loved this one, and the cooldown time after was also great and led to some other really fantastic things that they did in End of Dragons. One thing in particular,
we're gonna get there very soon. What I thought I would do is play the end of this cinematic where there's Soo-Won and there's Aureen, and I thought it'd just be nice to have the sound. Maybe Kroof will be in there probably at some point in time, but I think they left him mainly, so I'm gonna have some sound up.
Everyone to come together.
Yeah, so he might be a bit behind. I do apologize for peeps in this podcast.
Without your part, this world would be undone. Do not waste time with regret.
I'll try. Thank you.
Soo-Won.
Aww.
Can I confess something, little one? I'm afraid to die. I don't want to be alone. I once thought loneliness was our burden. Then I met you. Your kinship with the mortals. Cherish it.
I do. I will.
I'm going to dream now.
The cycle must end to be reborn.
Jesus.
The only one completed.
All done.
We're all gathering it up.
That was that was, you know, that to hear like a being as well say, like, to say I am afraid to die after creating something and being around for so long, and like still wants to be there, and they don't want to be alone. Like, you know, at the end of the day, that's kind of, I don't want to sound dark and morbid, but that's kind of where we are. You know, we're on our own. This is our journey. This is our path through life. And then we come to this place where we do feel probably very alone as well. And it's just imagining that specifically, and just, it's really done well. Like, it gets you. It does. If anyone plays that and it doesn't hit them somewhere, I don't know. They might be a narcissist. But like, do you know what I mean? Like, even just now, I've seen that a few times. Like, even just writing the notes, I was like, damn, I had to watch that a few times and just be like, that was like heavy. And they also said, like, I'm going to dream now. And then Aurene says the cycle must end to be reborn as well, which really makes you think, like, what does that mean? What does that sentence mean? Might not mean much at all. But like, you know, Aurene is essentially this rebirth, the cycle starting again, but also the magic and what Aurene is going to create. Like, is Aurene going to create dragons? Like, what is, there's so much left open, which is great for your mind to just kind of, wander off. But yeah, you're like, it's not it, but like, you know, it's pretty powerful. Good, right? Yeah, cool. Was it good?
It's incredibly humanizing to have that vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Every person will have feared loneliness and experienced loneliness, and every person is mortal. We face that at the end of our existence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost worse to watch someone that you love or that you long to be with leaving.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mother, the parental figure that she's never had, the person who could understand her better than anybody, and she's had such a fleeting time. And that is such a humanizing moment for entities that have, throughout the story, been very enigmatic. They were described when we first encountered them as like, you know, like primal forces, like an element, mindless elemental beings. But in the end, they have all the problems that we do of sibling rivalry and desperation and greed and fear, and it's a very humanizing moment for the story, and it gives us a great deal of compassion for a creature, Aurene, who is essentially a god, but we have pity for her.
Mm-hmm.
We can see her journey going forward, and it is going to be incredibly difficult, as we were joking about immortality.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a burden, especially when the people that you love are not.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they did it really, really well. They played that story beat perfectly. Yeah.
I think Crichton said it better than I could have. I love it. Yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same.
Yeah, cool. But yeah, that wasn't it. That wasn't the whole shebang. We are there. There's a lot to, and we'll leave other people to kind of glean from it what they want to. Like, there's the post kind of instant stuff. You can engage in other stories and achievements. I'm not going to go through that now. I don't think that's it's other than
as one tiny. I was saying one tiny note. I did really like that at the very end they let you talk to everybody in Arborstone, and then the credits roll over Aurene. I thought that was
good. That was good. I'm glad it wasn't just like a backdrop of like something else.
In case anybody hasn't, stay through the credits. There's an achievement for it.
Yes, there is. That's very true. But then, what is it? 3 weeks later or 3 months later? I can't remember.
I think it was weeks.
3 weeks, something like that. And then you go back.
And the implication, everyone had a nice vacation and just chilled for a while.
There's a letter from Kasmeer and basically saying they have something they want to share. And we're going back to like the pub where we basically everything started, like, you know, in season 1, where you all met together. And it was Marjorie's. Was it Marjorie's pub? I think back in the day.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was, right?
Yeah.
And it was just like, This was cool because I don't think I expected this. I was just like, yeah, cool, we're done. And then it was like suddenly mail. Like, let's go to this pub and hang out. Like, was this expected? What was everyone expecting at this point in time? Like, and again, this is major spoilers in case you haven't noticed yet, from the title and everything else. What was it like to kind of go back to this pub? Like, you know, that's the cycle as well. There's so much.
So I wasn't here for season 1. I didn't get to. I'm just playing season 1 for the first time. So this is actually really fresh on my mind that this is where the story started. So that was, it may not have been quite the same sense of nostalgia, but it was still it was consciously a very cool decision to make it all come loop back to right here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting it. For a long time, the community has talked about, you know, oh, I wish we could see their wedding. I wish we could, you know, because again, it's these characters are wonderful, right? It's funny to me whenever I have mentioned something like in a podcast or in other things, you know, every now and then we get the smarmy people in comments, wherever it is, or on Twitter, right, that are like, non-binary character, why'd you talk about liking that so much? Or like,
you should stay out of politics and make video games.
Yeah, or, you know, LGBT representation in the game, Or I remember on like one of the pre-release videos that I did as part of the kind of like media tour Guild Wars 2 did, which I think many of us got to participate in. I had mentioned like how wonderful I thought it was, and because while running it, the devs were also talking about how wonderful they thought it was. That they had like worked in Jade Tech and you know, people who use prosthetics and things like that, and that having this new horizon of representation in the game mattered to them as developers, and that they really loved as well just how it worked in a fantasy setting, right? Like, these things don't have to be silly gimmicky things. Just because you hear the word diversity or you hear, you know, like representation in games doesn't mean that it's like, I don't know, lessening the quality of your work. If anything, I think it enhances it, especially when it's done well. And Guild Wars 2, from the beginning, from Living Season 1, from before that, has been a game that has this diversity in it. So when people leave a comment or roll their eyes or make like, you know, whatever thing, I just sit here going, what game have you been playing for 10 years?
I don't get it either. I'm like, when was this new? Like, they've been supporting Pride for fucking like ever. Like, where are you existing
Can
in the
I just
world?
say, I've just rolled a new Elementalist on my Steam account. The first love story I've come across is I'm doing the Knight story where he's going around, he's got this magic armor. And the first love story, I intercede with 2 boys, they're in love. One of them is defending the other one from assault, and I intercede to save them. It's right there, guys. 10 years ago, it's right there on the first. I mean, I'm like level 4. Hello.
And I mean, the next major romance you see is Kaith and Fowlane.
Yep. Yes, and like representations of abusive relationships and representations of mental health, and like this game has always had such a touch for, like you were talking about with that final cutscene, bringing humanity to the game, not forced whatever you think it is, a literal reflection of humanity, like what it means to, in all its forms and shapes, to, you know, be a human being that exists in this world. And they're constantly looking to also expand that. And so, all of that said, I mean, the community for a long time, most of the community has really looked forward to seeing something like this, because they've been a long-standing couple in the game. They are iconic within the MMO sphere. There are no other MMOs I can think that have had an actual on-screen kiss between 2 characters that are in a same-sex relationship.
Nothing that comes to mind, no.
Yeah, like let alone anything that has been like this. And Guild Wars 2 did it in Living Season 1. So with the re-release of Living Season 1, and with 10 years of a story arc coming to a close, and with the fact that I know that many people that work at ArenaNet themselves are, you know, of all kinds of different backgrounds.
It's a hugely diverse company.
Yeah, like, The fact that they went, we're gonna capstone our expansion with, I thought it was an engagement, but it's been confirmed that it was like sort of a wedding.
Yeah, we were on that side. We thought they were getting married in the
I thought
game.
they were getting married.
I think it's so funny that they teased this instead of just giving us a wedding. This is like the cliffhanger.
It's not even happened yet. Like, when is that going to be? Is it going to? It should be Christmas. That would be cool.
Sorry, I said it wrong. Yes, we were on the opinion, Jebro and I were on the opinion that it was like a, like small, equivalent to like a courthouse wedding, right? Yeah. Where you're just like legalizing it and they had the paperwork drawn up and all that kind of stuff. But apparently it is an engagement. So we might still get a full-on wedding sequence.
I'm kind of glad that we're wrong about that, because then we can have that.
I know.
And I'm super happy to be 100% right, of course, which is fine. I'm super happy about that.
Of course, yeah, Crichton, yeah.
It's also good because that means they can use the wedding arch in Lion's Arch.
Exactly. Yes. At long last.
But is this a beginning of getting married in the game? Getting married in MMOs is a thing. Rift, you can get married. In ESO, you get married. If you
Final
give
Fantasy.
with the ring, you get extra XP. And like Rift, I remember that. And ESO actually, you give them the ring and they get extra bonus XP when they're level.
It'd be super cute. I would be so down for that.
That's so good.
New expansion feature.
Yeah. With all of that in mind, but also just myself, I was deeply moved. Here come the emotions again. You got me tearing up because you replayed that final cutscene, but now the emotions are gonna flood out.
I'll play that one as well if you want.
It has been such a hard year. And I actually think it's been a hard couple years, right? But I actually think that when I was playing through that, I'm trying to remember if this is actually how it lined up or if it's just how it lined up in my head. I'm going to go ahead and just say, I think this was around the time that we were first getting our whiffs and or had things happening with Roe versus Wade. And right around that time, and that being overturned in the United States. And right around that time, there was also some discussion about the fact that if this was the first, that there were intentions to come for others, and that gay marriage might be overturned. And I was in such a dark place. It was so scary. I mean, I tweeted about it, but even in the past, I had a friend, one of my best friends, who dealt with, during Trump's administration, the DREAM Act being overturned, because my friend was brought here against her will as a baby. She had no idea, and didn't even find out that she was an illegal immigrant to the United States until she was getting ready to apply for college. And when she was getting ready to, and all our other friends and myself and everybody, we were doing this, her parents sat her down and said, you cannot apply to colleges. If you do, they'll find out your social security number is fake, you are here illegally. And her entire life crumbled, and she was living in fear for years. And she called me when Trump was going to overturn DREAM Act, because every person that had applied for DREAM Act, sorry, this is kind of a long ramble, but I promise it gets us to the point where...
I'm in this. I get it, because I've had a case with a kid exactly in this situation. So yeah, carry on. And when it came to applying for DREAM Act, which for those who don't know was something that Obama instituted for children and young adults or people like my friend who were in this situation, to provide documentation of the life they had lived in the United States, so that they could get citizenship, or at least a temporary type of citizenship that would make it so that they weren't in immediate danger of losing their life or being deported, or as children being deported to places that they had never lived, or young people, teenagers, right? And for my friend, she'd only ever lived here. She was, my God, a way better student than any of our other friends. She was going to go to law school. She, she was the epitome of somebody, and you don't even have to be to deserve this kind of safety, but she was the epitome of somebody that had worked hard, that had taken care of her family, taken care of her friends, that was brilliant and driven and motivated to make the world a better place and contribute to society.
And she faced this. And I remember she called me when Trump was going to turn this over, and was sobbing because they'd had to provide so much documentation of their life in the United States, and they were now all on a list. And for all those years that she had hidden, they could deport her, and she could lose her life and be in a country she'd never been in and be unable to complete her law degree. And it was one of the most devastating phone calls I think I've ever received, minus a few others in my life, because we sat there in the dark crying. I was like, I'll marry you if I have to. I was like, we'll do whatever we have to do, because this is not going to happen to you, not to one of the best people I know. So all of this to say, when we got to this point, around this time, End of Dragons came out, and I think for me, the loss, and this wasn't even me directly, but the idea of what the loss of certain rights and what the reversal of certain legal decisions could do to somebody was so much more profound, because even secondhand, I had felt that fear for someone I loved. And when we got to this scene in End of Dragons that had been after just brutal news after brutal news after brutal news, people who refuse to acknowledge the humanity of other people, who refuse to acknowledge the rights of those who are immunocompromised to exist in the middle of a pandemic. All of these things, this fear on the horizon, where I was having message DMs, threads with friends where, I'm talking to them and I was like, okay, well, if your state dissolves your marriage, you can come up here. We will house you for as long as you need. If your state takes away your rights to trans health care, you can come up here. If your state, we were just, we had DMs coming in just constantly because people were scared. And people we loved were so terrified, and rightfully so. And I got to this part in End of Dragons, and the gaming space isn't always known for being something that is loving and compassionate and kind predominantly, although thankfully I think we all play a lot of games where there is a large majority that keeps that in mind. And I was blown away that in this climate, in this time, in this period, a game company would choose to end a 10-year expansion cap with a message of love and acceptance when we were in so desperate need of it, and humanity, It was so profoundly moving to me. I sobbed because it felt like I have to always make so many excuses for companies. It's like, well, it's really hard. They're a Japanese-based company, so they probably can't do, they should do, but they probably can't do representation. Or, oh, well, they're controlled by some big company and they know it could affect sales, so they're not good. And for all that we can talk about End of Dragons, to me personally, that moment was something where I went, this is what makes ArenaNet so special. There are so many reasons, but they didn't have to do that, and they did. And I think for so many people, it will have made them feel seen at a time when they were scared for their own existence. Worldwide, not even just the US, right? Like, so many things happening. And I just thought, sorry, this is so long. I just thought, to me, that was something that I will never forget, and I will never diminish that they did, because they didn't have to, and they did it beautifully and with grace, and the team cared about it. And they were so proud that they went out on a limb and they put it in the game, and that they requested specially that it be put in the game. And I just, God, it's such a wonderful thing. It was such a wonderful thing.
I think we talked about at one point how it was some other story beat that we were like, it's unfortunate this was the last story beat because it overrode what came before. They made sure that this was the final story beat. This is the last thing you see. It's the epilogue after the epilogue. It's the thing they wanted people to remember and come away feeling the most after everything they just did. Is that story, that little message of your love is love, and we want you to feel this kind of love.
Yeah.
That was their deliberate ending note.
I think that's awesome that you shared it with us as well. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
it's true.
it was a huge moment. So yeah, I was so happy to see that. And I think it was an amazing way to end the expansion. It was perfect. So
thank you for all being awesome, as you always are. And I'm very glad to always have you here to share such things, because it's always so important that we do these things, because it allows other people to do the same. And to think they're not alone in these situations is ever so important. And when you talk about stuff which is difficult, peeps, and this goes for anyone watching or listening, like you talk about stuff with shit in your life that's difficult, it enables other people to do the same. And it also enables people to not feel alone in that, you know? And I know what this kind of thing means to, I had kids that were going through that same thing, the turning over of Roe versus Wade, but then also, kids who were trans kids who were like glad that they were in Seattle because they just couldn't imagine living anywhere else, and the fear of that, and like what happens if it happens here, and all. And I'm not a member of the community, but like, I work with kids and adults who are affected, and I have friends like you or like who do go through this as well. So it's all so important to talk about, and there are so many people in the world who just don't understand how things like this are so important to different people, and to feel represented and included, and it's important. And I think ArenaNet really do. They're so diverse. Like, I mean, maybe the people within the company think they could be more diversity. Like, I think there's always that feeling we could always be more diverse. I don't think you can ever be the most diverse company ever. But you look at the people and you hear them talk about the game and their experiences and what they want to do. Like, it's good to see, and I'm glad that we're part of this community. It's very cool to talk about the game and the story in this way. I always thought that, and I'm even more glad and interested to see where they take it next, like seeing these stories develop specifically, and the new characters we see and the relationships that we see coming in, with an idea of representation and diversity in mind specifically. Very cool. I'm gonna start to move us towards an end, which sounds like, awful, but where we were, but it's like 3.5 hours. So, and these people have been here for a lot longer than that, because I was faffing about doing my setup, as I usually do. Is anyone want to say anything else about the end? Because I don't want to just like end it on some random note if I didn't mention something, or someone wanted to say something about that end instance there with the marriage and stuff, because potential marriage in the future that will happen, hopefully, in its own entire story, Living World season.
Can I say something about the story in general?
Yeah, sure. General. Yeah, I mean, we can end on some general notes generally about that. Seems like a good idea, actually.
So I think the whole of the expansion is an allegory for the difficulties that we face.
Mm.
I think as writers, you can't help but reflect the reality of your situation. And I think it's a story of hope. Hope that when we come together, when we put aside the petty differences of culture, when we accept each other fully as human beings, however we represent in this world, and we come with love and we come with passion, then we can overcome almost seemingly insurmountable challenges. And I think that that's the story that they've told. It's a story of hope and renewal and possibilities for everybody.
And maybe a bit of a rallying cry. I mean, I bet a lot of authors and story writers of all sorts would love that, if you take this message and see they're telling a story where people are putting aside, they're saying, okay, the world is bigger than our problem right here, right now. Let's do something about the bigger problem together. And their players act on that and come together and do something bigger and better together than they could do fighting their smaller problems alone.
Mm.
I will say that this is why the forces who we rally against, they don't want these stories to be told. Because every time you show people as people, they lose.
That's true.
Every time we love each other and we come together, they lose. They know that they might be on the right, but they're certainly not on the right side of history. And they're going to lose. We just have to love each other and keep moving forward. And the stories like this, they're so important, because in the midst of your real life turmoil, this little bit of fluff, this little bit of hope, this little bit of love, this little bit of another human being reaching out and saying, no, you're good. We love you. It means the world. It means everything, you know?
I think it's the building on that.
Yeah, Jesus, come on, people. I haven't got any tissues here. I'm gonna be like using my t-shirt in a minute.
It's been difficult the last few years because we've been watching catastrophic things happening on a scale that we can't even sometimes grasp, and we know we can't do anything about alone. And a lot of the problems, from political situations that we're seeing to the climate itself, the health of our planet, these are repercussions of choices made by generations, by people long dead even. And a message of hope like this rallying cry, I mean, yes, it's a fantasy world with a fantasy solution, but the message is still there that, yeah, the void existed since the dawn of time or before. But that doesn't mean that you just have to let it destroy everything that you love. You fight for it, you come together, you be stronger together and do everything you can to defend the good and the beautiful and the lovely that we have and that we can restore. And that's what it all felt like, is this problem was inherited, but they dealt with it by coming together.
It's not your fault, but it is all of our responsibilities to deal with it. That's the truth. And that goes from the climate to the nonsense on the far right. We have to deal with it head on together.
Okay. Awesome. I love it. Fuck, I love this podcast. Fuck, I love it. It's so good. It's so good. I'm so proud of this. I really am. It just gives me all the good feel. I've not got tissues. Calm down. It really does. I know I've said this many times, but I'm so proud. Oh, fuck off, you stupid person. It was just some person being silly in the chat. I just instantly banned their ass. I'm so proud. I can't even see the chat anymore because I've broken it. Of everything we have achieved here so far, and like just everything you're all bringing all the time. Thank you for your honesty and talking about stuff which is not easy to talk about. I want to bring some attention to what this month is about as well, specifically in mental health, suicide prevention as well, and all of the issues we've kind of talked about or brought in from our own lives, or we've talked about generally. You know, there's a lot going on for a lot of people out there right now. So, you know, this means a lot to me because of my own past. I'm not going to go into that right now, but like in my own journey and stuff, but like looking on those people as well that you may not have heard from in a while, checking on your friends, all of the stuff that is going on and continues to go on in our world, you know, with everyone from the LGBTQI plus and everything else is included in that community, you know, people who live in very, very diverse communities, people from cultures that we don't understand, who you may not have heard from for a long time. Just anyone and everyone, people, just like reach out to people, talk to people. You don't have to talk about what's going on in their lives specifically. A simple hello can sometimes just be enough to stop people from thinking about doing a thing that will, bring an end to their journey, to their life, to other people's, and, being able to witness and experience them in their own lives as well. You know what I'm trying to say? Just be good to people and don't be like that person in chat. Basically. We're going to end it there. I appreciate everyone's time. I might stick those bits and bobs under the description actually for the You Matter command if you want to use it in chat. It's something we have every week. There's loads of numbers, crisis lines and stuff as well. If you're ever in pain yourself and you need someone to talk to and you feel like you're in crisis, please make sure you reach out there. Otherwise, what a great podcast and time to end on the end of the entire Ender Dragon story review. That was pretty damn cool. We're done with that. We did it. We actually did it.
Ooh, at long last.
I know, right? I know Crew from Boots didn't get to do it. They did it a bit. They got that half in, and that's fine. But yeah, we're gonna end it there. Anything else? Final word, Crone. We're gonna say a thing.
I was going to say the next podcast should be where we all want the expansion to go. Which worlds we want to explore next.
God.
That would be pretty good.
Strange New Worlds. Sandra Day was yesterday.
Oh my god, it was such a good show. Also watch Sandman. Anyway, carry on.
Might be fun to have one talk about if there were to be a Guild Wars 3, what would that be?
Yeah, that's on the list. Yeah. There's a lot on the list. I've got to work out next week's one first. I'm also starting my own work soon. So as a note as well, if you're watching and listening to the podcast, there may be a change it might be in time or day. I'm not too sure. It won't be next week, but the week after, and how things are continuing on. But yeah, we'll see because I don't know what's going on right now because I'm going to be a counselor in a week and a half. Yay! So that's going to be cool.
It's going to be awesome.
It is. I'm excited, but scared shitless as well. But yeah, otherwise, Rookery, tell us what you do, where you do it. Where can we find you?
Yep. You can find me on Twitch at Rookery, ROOKURI. You can also find me on YouTube at Rookery and on both this podcast and Aetherite Radio, the Final Fantasy XIV podcast that I do on Saturdays. If I'm not live on one of those places or if there's not a video going up, you can probably find me doing a variety of other special events and other kinds of content. We've done cooking competitions recently. We've done shoutcasting for Race to World First and competitive PvP shoutcasting. So keep an eye out wherever I'm at, whatever I'm doing. We are always happy to see you.
Awesome. As usual, very, very awesome to have you on the show. Thank you, Rookery. Scotch, tell us what you do, Tell us about yourself.
I am a variety streamer here on Twitch at Otterscotch. I right now only do Guild Wars on Tuesdays, so definitely join for that. But look forward to as soon as fall hits, I'm going to be needle felting and crafting again. And this is for people listening, I'm showing off my little felted quaggan again. It's the sort of thing that we make.
Awesome. Yes. If you can't see the stream or the video or anything, yes, come and watch the video at least for that. There's many reasons you should come, but it's very good. Awesome. Thank you again, Scotch, for joining us as well. Legend. And last but not least, Fornax, the Crown Herald, with a beanbag in the background because I wasn't sure what that was. I thought it was a ham at first, but it's actually a beanbag.
Sure.
It looks like a ham, man. Look at it.
It does now. Looking at it, look like a ham. Yes. Okay, I'll have to change that.
No, don't.
Wow.
The big ham in the background is important.
It's a
It's not
ham-shaped
suitable
beanbag.
for a vegan.
It
No,
looks.
it's
It's not suitable for a vegan. Oh, your life is a lie. I understand.
not. It is. Yeah. I actually don't have pink hair either.
Oh my god.
No,
Ruined.
the lies. Yeah. So I'm Phonax, the Crichton Herald. If ArenaNet wants to employ me as their law master, come at me in the comments.
Name's there.
Come at me in the comments. That's the weirdest place to initiate employment. Hello, Phonax. Would you like to work for us?
Actually, I do have a work email. So Crichton, the Crichton Herald at gmail.com. You can contact me there. Anyway, my fantasy life aside, I make videos on YouTube, the Crichton Herald. I've done a huge load. If you're brand new to Guild Wars 2 and you're just getting into it, you're probably not watching this podcast, but share it with your friends. I've done a huge 24-part mini-series for getting into Guild Wars 2. Sorry, totally wrong. My brain is scrambled now after all the talking. And I'm also going to be streaming on Twitch and YouTube, doing some playing through the game from start to finish on a brand new account. God help me. Yeah. That's what I'm doing.
Nice. That's cool. Exciting. Okay. Legends. Again, thanks so much for sharing everything that you have. We are going to be leaving you now, but a reminder, I am myself gonna be streaming on YouTube on Saturday. So we're actually gonna have a YouTube stream once a week. Maybe. We'll see how it goes, because I have no idea how well that's gonna go. You know, it's gonna be me and the mods at the very least. I don't actually care. It's gonna be fun. I just want to try another platform. Now we have the ability to do that. I can't dual stream or whatever the flipping thing people are calling it. But yeah, so if you do want to come and join, that's gonna be on Saturday. It's about 12 p.m. Pacific. That's live people here as well. That's tomorrow. Different systems, different stuff. Could be fun. Could completely go wrong and completely tits up. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be fun at the very least. Otherwise, the podcast will still remain weekly, and I will let everyone know about changes should they come up. Twitch.tv/JebroUni on Twitch. That's not changing. I'm still streaming on Twitch on the weekends. And yeah, otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Go and check out the past episodes, anchor.fm/JebroUnity. Check out the YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and all the things of all of the people that we have. They have links as well to the game if you want to buy it through their link. We will see you next time on the Lightbringers podcast. Do a little wave if you want. We did the story. We did End of Dragons. It's done, and I have to find music as well. Otherwise, this is going to be an awkward ending. There's nothing awkward about me. Everyone, thanks so much for watching the Lightbringers podcast. I appreciate you all listening, watching, and being a part of this awesome community. We'll see you next time. Take care for episode 24. I don't know what it's going to be about. Bye.